While he was enjoying himself at a lavish party with his mistress, his wife was alone in the hospital, giving birth to their child. But when he got home, what he found made his blood freeze, something he could have never predicted. Rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 42nd floor office as Jaden McCormick stood silently, watching Seattle dissolve into a grey watercolor beneath him. His reflection stared back, tailored Tom Ford suit, expertly styled hair, the Patek Philippe watch worth more than what most people in the city below made in a year. At 38, he was exactly where he'd always planned to be, at the top. "Mr. McCormick?" His assistant's voice broke through the intercom. "Ms. Mitchell is here for your 4 o'clock. Jaden adjusted his cuffs, a habit he'd developed whenever he felt a flutter of anticipation. "Send her in." The mahogany door swung open, bringing with it a subtle waft of amber perfume that had become instantly recognizable to him over the past 2 months. Ariadne Mitchell stepped in, her dark hair falling in soft waves against the structured shoulders of her burgundy blazer. "Sorry I'm late," she said, though the half-smile playing at her lips suggested she wasn't sorry at all. "The Anderson deal had some complications." "I trust you handled them," Jaden replied, gesturing toward the leather chairs positioned in front of his desk. He didn't immediately move from the window. These few seconds, watching her, being watched by her, had become a ritual he looked forward to more than he cared to admit. "Would I be here if I hadn't?" She placed her portfolio on his desk, brushing aside a framed photo as she did. The silver frame tilted backward, revealing his wife Lydia's gentle smile, her hand resting protectively over her 7-month pregnant belly. Ariadne's eyes flicked to the photo, then back to Jaden, something unspoken passing between them. "The preliminary contracts are ready for your review." Her voice remained professional, but her fingers lingered a moment too long as she handed him the folder. Outside, lightning splintered across the darkening sky. In that flash of white light, Jaden saw his life with perfect clarity, what he had, what he wanted, and the increasingly blurry line between the two. The McCormick estate in Medina overlooked Lake Washington, its modernist architecture and manicured gardens, making it a showpiece featured in more than one architectural digest. Lydia was waiting in the kitchen when Jaden arrived home, her English literature books spread across the marble island while she graded papers. "Are you home early?" she said, surprise evident in her voice. At 34, pregnancy had softened her features, adding a glow to her naturally reserved demeanor. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a loose bun, wisps framing her face in a way that once made his heart skip. "Thought I'd surprise you." He dropped his keys in the handcrafted bowl by the door, a wedding gift from her parents in Oregon. "How are you feeling?" "Better today. The little one's been active." She placed a hand on her rounded belly, a gesture that should have filled him with warmth, but instead triggered a vague discomfort he'd been feeling more frequently. Lydia had always been his opposite, thoughtful where he was impulsive, content with quiet evenings at home while he craved the electric energy of Seattle's social circuit. When they'd met at a charity auction 6 years ago, those differences had been intriguing. She'd seen through his practiced charm immediately, challenging him with quiet intelligence rather than falling for his usual routine. The pursuit had been refreshing, and when she finally said yes to dinner, he'd felt like he'd won something precious. Now, watching her move carefully around the kitchen, Jaden felt a confusing mix of tenderness and restraint. He loved her, he did, but lately, it felt more like an established fact than an active emotion. "Madison called," Lydia said, referring to her best friend and the only person in their social circle who had never fully warmed to Jaden. "She's planning a small baby shower next weekend. Nothing extravagant." "That's nice of her." He loosened his tie, pouring himself 2 fingers of whiskey. "Listen, about the Emerald City Ball next month." I know. You have to go." Lydia smiled understandingly. "It's your biggest fundraising night of the year. I wouldn't expect you to miss it." Her easy acceptance should have been a relief. Instead, it stirred something uncomfortable in his chest. "You could come too. Dr. Reynolds said short outings would be fine." "At 8 months pregnant? I'd be asleep before the first dance." She placed her hand over his. "Besides, someone should be well rested when this baby decides to arrive." He lifted her hand to his lips, a gesture that had become mechanical. "I won't stay late." The lie tasted bitter, but he'd grown accustomed to the flavor. The next morning, Seattle's rare autumn sunshine streamed through the windows of the downtown McCormick Investments headquarters. Jaden strode through the open concept office, where 20 employees managed the real estate portfolio that had made him a fortune over the last decade. "Morning, Mr. McCormick," called several voices as he passed. He nodded in acknowledgement, the perfect picture of the successful, approachable boss. In the conference room, his executive team awaited the weekly strategy meeting. Among them, Ariadne sat reviewing documents, her presence drawing his attention like a magnet. At 29, she was the newest addition to his team, recruited from a competitor in Los Angeles, with the promise of advancement and a salary that had raised eyebrows among his longer-serving employees. "Let's begin with the waterfront project," Jaden announced, signaling his assistant to dim the lights for the presentation. As the meeting progressed, he found himself watching Ariadne more than the slides. The intelligence in her questions, the slight furrow of concentration between her brows, the confident way she leaned forward when making a point, all of it fascinated him in a way that felt dangerous and exhilarating. When the meeting concluded, the team filed out, but Ariadne lingered, organizing her notes with deliberate slowness. "Have dinner with me tonight," Jaden said quietly once they were alone, surprising himself with the directness of the invitation. She looked up, her expression careful. "Is that a good idea?" "Probably not," he admitted, "but I want to discuss the East Side expansion plans." The pretense was thin, and they both knew it. A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. "The Metropolitan at 8. They have private dining rooms for business discussions." His pulse quickened. "I'll have my assistant make the reservation." As she walked away, Jaden felt a momentary flash of his father's voice, a stern Baptist minister from Eastern Washington, who had drilled into him the importance of honor and commitment. He silenced the voice with practiced ease. His father had died 3 years ago, never fully understanding the world Jaden had built for himself in Seattle, never quite approving of his son's version of success. That evening, the Metropolitan's discreet private dining room offered the perfect setting for what wasn't really a business dinner. Jaden watched Ariadne take a sip of the Barolo he'd ordered, the soft lighting accentuating the elegant line of her neck. "You didn't have to go to all this trouble," she said, though her pleased expression suggested she appreciated that he had. "We could have discussed the East Side plans at the office. We both know that's not why we're here." The admission hung between them, neither willing to be the first to reach for it. She set down her glass. "Then why are we here, Jaden?" The sound of his first name in her voice sent a current through him. At the office, it was always Mr. McCormick, even behind closed doors. "Because I can't stop thinking about you," he said, the words emerging with an honesty that startled him. "And I think you feel the same way." Ariadne studied him for a long moment. "You're married. Your wife is pregnant." "I know." The simple acknowledgement carried the weight of all he was considering betraying. "And that doesn't matter." Her question wasn't judgmental but curious, as if she were trying to understand the moral calculations taking place behind his eyes. Jaden looked down at his wedding band, twisting it slightly. "It should matter more than it does right now." She reached across the table, her fingers stopping just short of his. "I'm not interested in destroying anyone's marriage, Jaden, but I'm also not going to pretend there isn't something happening between us." The honesty was refreshing. No games, no pretense. It was one of the things that drew him to her. "The Emerald City Ball is in 3 weeks, he said, changing course slightly. "Would you come as my guest?" Professionally speaking, of course. The invitation was reckless and they both knew it. The ball was Seattle's premier social event, where the city's elite gathered under the pretense of charity to see and be seen. "Your wife won't attend?" "Lydia's due date is close. She's staying home." Something flickered across Ariadne's face, hesitation perhaps, or the recognition of a line being crossed. Then she smiled, a decision made. "I'll need to find something suitable to wear." As the date of the Emerald City Ball approached, Jaden found himself living in 2 increasingly separate worlds. At home he played the role of attentive husband, attending birthing classes with Lydia, assembling nursery furniture, discussing names for their son, August, they'd decided, after Lydia's favorite literary month. The anticipation in her eyes whenever she spoke of their future family filled him with a guilt that he promptly suppressed. At work, the tension between him and Ariadne built with each passing day. Lingering glances in meetings, hands brushing when exchanging documents, late-night strategy sessions that had little to do with business strategy. They hadn't crossed the final line yet, but Jaden knew it was only a matter of time and opportunity. The opportunity presented itself a week before the ball, when a business trip to Portland created the perfect alibi. He told Lydia he'd be gone overnight. He told his assistant to clear his schedule. In reality, he checked into the Four Seasons Seattle, where Ariadne met him with a bottle of champagne and no illusions about what the evening meant. Afterward, lying in the tangled sheets with the Seattle skyline glittering beyond the windows, Jaden felt a complex mix of satisfaction and shame. Ariadne slept beside him, her breathing deep and even, while his mind raced with what he'd just set in motion. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. Lydia's name illuminated the screen alongside a text. "Baby kicked so hard today he woke me from a nap. I think he misses his daddy. Hope the meetings are going well. Love you." Jaden stared at the message until the screen went dark, then placed the phone face down without replying. The evening before the Emerald City Ball, Jaden arrived home to find Lydia in the nursery, arranging stuffed animals in the crib they'd chosen together. The soft yellow walls and woodland theme had been her choice. She wanted their son surrounded by stories from his first moments. "There you are," she said, smiling as he appeared in the doorway. "I was beginning to think you'd moved into your office." The gentle teasing held no accusation, which somehow made it worse. Just finalizing details for tomorrow night. Another half-truth in a growing collection. "I know how important the ball is for your business connections." She ran her hand over the small clothes folded neatly in the dresser. "Madison offered to come over to keep me company, but I told her I'd be fine, probably asleep by 9 anyway." Jaden crossed the room, placing his hands on her shoulders. The curve of her belly pressed against him, their son between them. "You're sure you don't mind?" She turned in his arms, reaching up to straighten his tie in a gesture that had become one of their habits. "I'm sure. Just promise you won't stay out too late. According to my pregnancy app, August could decide to arrive early, and I'd rather not do this alone." The simple trust in her eyes made his chest tighten. "I promise," he said, the words hollow in his mouth. "If you need me, I'll come right home." Lydia smiled, believing him completely. "I know you will. That's why I love you." She stretched up to kiss him, and Jaden returned the kiss automatically, his mind already in another room with another woman. As he held his wife, feeling their son move between them, Jaden made a promise he had no intention of keeping, and for a fleeting moment, he wondered what kind of man that made him. The answer was waiting in his reflection in the nursery window, the kind who had everything and still wanted more. The Fairmont Olympic Hotel glowed like a crystal palace against Seattle's night sky. Limousines lined the cobblestone driveway, disgorging the city's elite in their finest attire. Inside, the grand ballroom had been transformed for the Emerald City Foundation Ball. Crystal chandeliers reflected in polished marble floors, emerald and gold accents adorning every table, and a 16-piece orchestra filling the space with elegant melodies. Jaden arrived alone, nodding to familiar faces as he made his way through the crowd. CEOs, tech moguls, old money families, all the power players who fueled his business empire were in attendance. He accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, scanning the room with practiced nonchalance. "Looking for someone?" The voice came from behind him, low and teasing. He turned to find Ariadne, and for a moment, he simply stared. Her emerald gown cascaded like liquid down her body, the color making her eyes appear almost supernaturally green. Her dark hair was swept up, exposing the elegant line of her neck and the diamond earrings that caught the light when she moved. "I didn't think it was possible," he said quietly, "but you've managed to outshine every woman in this room." She raised an eyebrow. "Careful, Mr. McCormick. People might talk." "Let them." The champagne and her presence made him reckless. "Dance with me." On the dance floor, they maintained a professional distance, but their eyes held conversations their bodies couldn't yet have. The orchestra played a waltz, and Jaden guided her through the steps with the confidence of a man who'd learned ballroom dancing as a business skill rather than a passion. "Everyone's watching us," she murmured, her lips barely moving. "No one's watching us," he corrected. "They're watching the potential new development partners discussing business on the dance floor. Nothing unusual about that." Her laugh was subtle, just a slight change in her breathing. "Is that what we're doing? Discussing business?" His hand tightened slightly at her waist. "We can discuss whatever you'd like. Later." The promise hung between them as the music shifted to a new piece, and they separated with reluctant propriety. Across the city in Medina, Lydia McCormick moved carefully through the quiet house, one hand supporting her lower back. She'd been experiencing discomfort all day. Nothing alarming, just the usual aches of late pregnancy amplified. The baby had been unusually active, shifting and pushing as if testing the boundaries of his world. She checked her phone, 9:17 p.m. Jayden would be deep into networking by now. She smiled faintly, imagining him in his element, working the room with the charisma that had first attracted her to him. Their worlds were so different. Sometimes she wondered if that had been part of the appeal for both of them. She, the bookish professor, fascinated by his ambition. He, the driven entrepreneur, charmed by her thoughtfulness. A sudden sharp pain caused her to gasp, clutching the kitchen counter for support. When it passed, she took a deep breath, counting the minutes on the microwave clock. Probably just Braxton Hicks contractions, she reasoned. Still, when another pain gripped her 14 minutes later, she decided to time them properly. By 10:30 p.m., the contractions were coming 11 minutes apart, and Lydia was beginning to worry. She was only at 34 weeks, too early for August to make his appearance. She dialed Jayden's number, listening to it ring until voicemail picked up. "Hey, it's me," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. "I think I might be in labor. It's probably a false alarm, but could you call me when you get this? Love you." She hung up, breathing through another contraction. Maybe she was overreacting. She decided to call her doctor before bothering Jayden again at such an important event. Back at the ball, Jayden found himself cornered by the mayor, discussing potential waterfront development projects. He nodded at appropriate intervals, his attention split between maintaining the appearance of interest and tracking Ariadne's movements across the room. She was currently engaged in conversation with the CEO of a major tech company, her animated gestures suggesting she was pitching something impressive. His phone vibrated in his pocket. Glancing down discreetly, he saw Lydia's name on the screen. He silenced it without breaking conversation with the mayor, making a mental note to check the message later. When he finally extricated himself from the political conversation, Jayden made his way to the bar, where Ariadne was now waiting with 2 fresh glasses of champagne. "Successful hunting?" he asked, taking the offered glass. "Very. Roberts is interested in our Lake Union proposal. He wants preliminary drawings by next week." Her eyes sparkled with professional triumph. "And you? I saw you deep in conversation with the mayor. Political posturing mostly, but useful." He clinked his glass against hers. 2 successful partnerships. The double meaning wasn't lost on either of them. As they sipped their champagne, his phone vibrated again. This time he pulled it out to check. 3 missed calls from Lydia and 1 from an unknown number. A flicker of concern crossed his mind, quickly suppressed when Ariadne's hand brushed his arm. "Everything all right?" she asked, noticing his momentary distraction. He silenced the phone again, slipping it back into his pocket. "Nothing that can't wait." The contractions were 7 minutes apart when Lydia called Madison in growing panic. "I can't reach Jayden," she explained, her voice tight with pain. "Something's wrong. The baby's coming too early." "I'm on my way," Madison replied without hesitation. "Have you called an ambulance?" "Not yet." Lydia broke off as another contraction seized her. "I didn't want to overreact." "Call 911 right now," Madison instructed firmly. "I'll be there in 20 minutes." By the time the ambulance arrived, Lydia was on the floor of the master bathroom, unable to stand through the contractions. The paramedics worked efficiently, asking questions while taking her vitals. "Has your water broken?" one asked, helping her onto a stretcher. "No, but something doesn't feel right," Lydia gasped. "It's too early. We're going to get you to Swedish Medical Center. They have an excellent NICU if needed," the paramedic assured her, squeezing her hand. "Is your husband meeting us there?" "I don't know," Lydia whispered, tears filling her eyes. "I can't reach him." As they loaded her into the ambulance, Madison's car screeched into the driveway. She ran toward them, still wearing pajama pants under her coat. "I'm coming with her," she announced to the paramedics, climbing in beside Lydia and taking her hand. "I've been trying to call your husband," she told Lydia. No answer. Lydia closed her eyes, fighting another contraction and the creeping fear that she would face this ordeal alone. At 11:42 p.m., the ball was reaching its peak. The dance floor was crowded, the alcohol flowing freely, and the orchestra had shifted to more contemporary pieces. Jayden and Ariadne had established a careful rhythm of separation and reconnection throughout the evening, maintaining the appearance of professional colleagues while exchanging loaded glances across the room. During a charity auction, Jayden's phone vibrated persistently. Annoyed by the interruption, He stepped into a quiet hallway to check it. 6 missed calls from Lydia, 3 from Madison, and 2 from Swedish Medical Center. A cold wave of dread washed over him as he listened to the increasingly urgent voicemails. Mr. McCormick, this is Nurse Daniels from Swedish Medical Center. Your wife has been admitted in premature labor. Please call us back as soon as possible. Madison's message was blunt. Where the hell are you? Lydia needs you. They're preparing for an emergency C-section. His thumb hovered over the call button, the weight of responsibility suddenly crushing. In that moment, Ariadne appeared in the hallway, her expression shifting from invitation to concern when she saw his face. What's wrong? She asked, moving closer. Lydia's in the hospital. The baby. He trailed off, the reality of the situation colliding with the evening he'd planned, the evening that was supposed to end in Ariadne's apartment. Something in Ariadne's expression hardened slightly. You should go. I know. But he didn't move. His phone vibrated again. Madison calling. He stared at the screen, then silenced it again, looking up at Ariadne. In her eyes, he saw the question neither of them had asked aloud. What kind of man was he, really? I should make an appearance, he said slowly. Let them know I'm on my way, at least. But you're not going to go right now, are you? Ariadne's voice was carefully neutral, but her eyes held a new wariness. Jaden straightened his tie, decision made. The ball's almost over. We've put in our appearance. Let's get out of here. He held out his hand, and after a hesitation that might have meant something if he'd chosen to notice it, she took it. In the harsh, fluorescent light of the hospital room, Lydia gripped Madison's hand as the medical team moved with controlled urgency around her. The fetal monitor showed concerning patterns, the baby's heart rate dropping with each contraction. Mrs. McCormick, we need to perform an emergency cesarean, Dr. Reynolds explained, her expression grave. The baby is in distress and there are signs of placental abruption. But it's too early, Lydia whispered, terror washing through her. 34 weeks gives us a good prognosis, the doctor assured her. But we need to act quickly. Do you understand? Lydia nodded, tears streaming down her face. Has anyone reached my husband? Madison and the nurse exchanged a glance that Lydia didn't miss. We're still trying, Madison said, squeezing her hand. But I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. As they prepped Lydia for surgery, Madison stepped into the hallway, dialing Jaden's number again. When it went straight to voicemail, she made a decision. Opening the tracking app that Lydia had installed on both their phones for emergencies, she watched the little blue dot marking Jaden's location. It wasn't at the Fairmont Olympic. It was moving toward an address in Capitol Hill. Madison's face hardened with fury and determination. I know where you are, you son of a bitch, she whispered, grabbing her keys. Lydia's in surgery. I'll be back as soon as I can, she told the nurse, rushing toward the elevator. The lights of the city reflected on Lake Union as Jaden and Ariadne entered her apartment. The space was like her, elegant, modern, with unexpected touches of warmth. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the water and the downtown skyline beyond. Drink, she offered, moving to a small bar cart. Please. He needed something stronger than champagne now, something to dull the persistent voice in the back of his mind, telling him where he should really be. She handed him a tumbler of whiskey, their fingers brushing. The tension that had built throughout the evening hung between them, neither willing to be the first to bridge the final gap. You're thinking about your wife, Ariadne said finally, her directness cutting through his pretense. I'm thinking about you, he countered, stepping closer. Liar. But there was no judgment in her voice, only an observation. He took her face in his hands, the whiskey forgotten. Right now, in this moment, nothing else exists. And as he kissed her, he willed it to be true. Madison pulled up outside the sleek apartment building in Capitol Hill, the tracking app showing Jaden's location on the 5th floor. Fury propelled her through the lobby, past a startled doorman, and into the elevator. She didn't have a plan beyond confrontation, beyond forcing Jaden to face what he was doing, while Lydia fought for her life and their child's. At apartment 507, she hesitated only briefly before pounding on the door. When no one answered, she moved to the large windows facing the street, peering up at the 5th floor. Through partially open curtains, she could see 2 figures locked in an embrace, moving toward a hallway that presumably led to a bedroom. Rage and disgust flooded her. She considered breaking down the door, creating a scene, forcing Jaden to face his betrayal publicly. But Lydia needed her more than she needed revenge. Taking out her phone, she snapped several photos of the building and apartment number, then returned to her car. "I know exactly where you are," she texted Jayden. "While you're fucking your assistant, your wife is having emergency surgery. I hope she was worth it." Then she drove back to the hospital, hands shaking on the steering wheel. At 3:17 a.m., Jayden awoke to the buzzing of his phone. Disentangling himself from Ariadne's sleeping form, he checked the screen, and cold reality crashed over him. 27 missed calls, dozens of texts, voicemails from the hospital, from Madison, from Lydia's parents. Then Madison's last text. August James McCormick was born at 1:42 a.m. 4 LBS 70Z. Lydia had complications. She's been asking for you. The world seemed to tilt beneath him. He stood abruptly, searching for his clothes in the darkened room. "What's wrong?" Ariadne murmured sleepily from the bed. "I have to go. My son—" He couldn't finish the sentence, shame choking him as he pulled on his tuxedo pants. Lydia had the baby. There were complications. Ariadne sat up, the sheet falling away. In the dim light from the window, he saw her expression shift from confusion to understanding. "Go," she said simply. "You should have gone hours ago." The accusation in her voice mirrored his own self-loathing. He finished dressing in silence, not meeting her eyes again before leaving. The drive to Swedish Medical Center was a blur of rain-slicked streets and self-recrimination. What had seemed like a justifiable choice hours ago now appeared monstrous in the harsh light of consequences. He had abandoned his wife, his pregnant wife, in her moment of greatest need for what? A night of passion that now left him hollow? The hospital corridors were eerily quiet at that hour, his footsteps echoing as he made his way to the maternity ward. At the nurses' station, he identified himself, watching their expressions shift from professional courtesy to barely concealed judgment. "Your wife is in recovery," a nurse informed him coldly. "Your son is in the NICU. He's stable but requiring oxygen support." "Can I see them?" Jayden asked, his voice hoarse. "I'll check if your wife is awake," the nurse replied, her tone making it clear what she thought of fathers who showed up hours after the birth. As Jayden waited, pacing the sterile corridor, Madison emerged from a room down the hall. When she saw him, her face transformed into a mask of pure hatred. She stalked toward him, stopping inches from his face. "Where the hell were you?" she hissed, keeping her voice low but intense. The ball ran late and my phone— "Save your pathetic lies for Lydia," Madison cut him off. "I tracked your phone. I saw you with her. I saw your location at that apartment all night while your wife was hemorrhaging on an operating table." The blood drained from Jayden's face. "Hemorrhaging? Is she— She's alive. No thanks to you." Madison's eyes glittered with tears of rage. The placenta detached. She lost a lot of blood. They had to perform an emergency hysterectomy along with the C-section. The word hit Jayden like a physical blow. Hysterectomy. No more children. A permanent consequence of a night he couldn't take back. "I need to see her," he whispered. "You don't deserve to," Madison replied, but she stepped aside. "But it's not my call. She's been asking for you all night, believing some emergency kept you away. She trusts you that much." The weight of Lydia's trust, so completely undeserved, nearly brought Jayden to his knees. Outside Lydia's room, he paused, straightening his rumpled tuxedo in a futile attempt at dignity. When he entered, the sight of her stopped him cold. She lay pale against the white sheets, IV lines running into her arms, monitors beeping softly beside her. Her eyes were closed, dark shadows beneath them contrasting sharply with her bloodless lips. "Lydia," he whispered, approaching the bed cautiously. Her eyes fluttered open, taking a moment to focus on him. "You came," she murmured, her voice weak but relieved. The simple faith in those two words shattered something in Jayden. He took her hand, fighting back tears of shame. "I'm so sorry I wasn't here." "What happened?" she asked, and for a terrifying moment, he thought Madison had told her everything. "There was an emergency," he said, the lie bitter on his tongue. "My phone died. I came as soon as I got the messages." She accepted this with a small nod, too exhausted to question further. "Have you seen him? August?" "Not yet. I came straight to you." "He's so tiny," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "They said he's doing well, considering. But there was something wrong with the placenta. It detached and they couldn't stop the bleeding. They had to—" Her voice broke. "I know," Jaden said, squeezing her hand. Madison told me. Lydia's eyes filled with fresh tears. No more babies, she whispered. We always talked about having two, remember? A boy and a girl. Jaden couldn't speak past the knot in his throat. The future they had planned together irreparably altered during the hours he'd spent in another woman's bed. But August is here, Lydia continued, forcing a smile. That's what matters now. Our son is here. Jaden nodded, unable to meet her eyes. Our son, he repeated, the words feeling foreign on his tongue. Father. He was a father now, thrust into a role he'd thought he had months yet to prepare for, and he'd begun by failing spectacularly. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Mrs. McCormick, it's time for your pain medication. And Mr. McCormick, if you'd like to see your son, I can take you to the NICU after. Lydia squeezed his hand weakly. Go meet our boy, she murmured, already drifting toward medication-induced sleep. Tell him I love him. In the NICU, Jaden stared through the glass at the tiny form of his son. August James McCormick looked impossibly small in the incubator, tubes and wires connecting his fragile body to machines that monitored and sustained him. His skin was reddish and translucent, his chest rising and falling with rapid, shallow breaths beneath the oxygen cannula. Would you like to go in? A nurse asked, her expression softening slightly at his obvious shock. You can touch him through the ports in the incubator. Jaden nodded, following her through a scrub room where he washed his hands thoroughly before donning a sterile gown. Inside the NICU, the soft beeping of monitors and the occasional alarm created a tense soundtrack to the drama of new lives fighting to stabilize. At August's incubator, Jaden paused, suddenly terrified. This tiny being depended on him completely, and his first act as a father had been profound betrayal. It's okay, the nurse encouraged. You can put your hands through here. Gentle touch is good for him. With trembling fingers, Jaden reached through the port, his large hand hovering over his son's miniature form. When he finally made contact, touching the impossibly soft skin of August's arm, the baby's hand reflexively opened, then closed around Jaden's fingertip. The simple gesture of trust broke something open inside him. Tears he'd been holding back spilled down his face as he gazed at his son, taking in every perfect detail. The delicate eyelashes, the tiny fingernails, the wisp of dark hair that suggested he might take after Jaden, rather than Lydia's blonde coloring. I'm here, August, he whispered, knowing it was too little, too late, but needing to say it anyway. Dad's here now. The days that followed passed in a blur of hospital rooms, medical updates, and crushing guilt. Jaden moved between the NICU and Lydia's room, trying to be present for both his wife and son, while carrying the weight of his deception. He ignored Ariadne's calls and texts, focusing entirely on the family he'd so carelessly risked. Lydia's recovery was slow and complicated by the emotional after-effects of the traumatic birth and surgery. She spent long hours staring silently out the window or watching August through the NICU cameras when she couldn't be with him physically. The natural joy of new motherhood was tempered by grief for what she'd lost and the lingering shadows of the emergency that had brought August into the world. On the 5th day, when Lydia was finally strong enough to sit in a wheelchair beside August's incubator for an extended period, Jaden noticed how she flinched slightly when he touched her shoulder. It was subtle, possibly unconscious, but unmistakable. What is it? He asked quietly, as the NICU nurse stepped away to check on another baby. Lydia kept her eyes on August, who was showing improvement daily, now breathing without assistance. Nothing, she said, her voice flat. Just tired. But later that night, as Jaden helped her back into her hospital bed, she finally met his eyes fully for the first time since the birth. Where were you really that night? The question caught him off guard. What do you mean? Madison won't look at you. The nurses whisper when you leave the room. Something happened. Her voice was calm, detached, as if she were discussing a character in one of her literature classes, rather than her own marriage. Lydia, I told you, don't. She held up a hand, stopping him. Don't lie to me again. I deserve at least that much respect. Jaden sank into the chair beside her bed, his carefully constructed explanations crumbling. But he couldn't bring himself to confess the full truth, not while she was still recovering, not in this sterile room with its reminders of all she'd lost because of him. There were complications at the ball, he said finally, the partial truth all he could offer. I didn't handle things well. I should have been here. Lydia studied him for a long moment, her literary professor's ability to analyze text extending to the subtext of his words. I see, she said finally, her voice barely audible. "I think I need to rest now." She turned away from him, curling onto her side, despite the pain it must have caused her surgical incision. The message was clear. Whatever explanation he was offering, it wasn't enough, and she didn't have the strength to drag the truth from him. Jayden sat in the darkness beside her bed, long after her breathing had evened into sleep, watching the gentle rise and fall of her shoulders and wondering if anything would ever be the same between them again. In the silence, broken only by the soft beeping of monitors, he confronted the reality that some betrayals create a distance that can never fully be bridged. When he finally left the hospital room, dawn was breaking over Seattle, painting the rain-slicked streets in pale gold light. Jayden stood in the hospital parking lot, keys in hand, unable to remember where he'd parked or where he was supposed to go. Home was empty. Work seemed trivial. His entire world had narrowed to these hospital corridors and the two people within them, one fighting for his life, the other silently withdrawing from Jayden's. 2 weeks after August's birth, the McCormick mansion in Medina felt more like a mausoleum than a home. Silence stretched between its occupants, broken only by the occasional soft sounds from the baby monitor. August had been released from the NICU 3 days earlier, surprisingly strong for a premature infant. The same could not be said for his parents' relationship. Jayden moved through the house like a ghost, sleeping in the guest room without being asked, giving Lydia space that felt less like consideration and more like cowardice. In the nursery they had decorated together with such hope, he would stand watching his son sleep, marveling at the tiny fingers and perfect features while drowning in shame. At work, he went through the motions, attending meetings and making decisions with mechanical efficiency. His phone buzzed frequently with messages from Ariadne, first concerned, then confused, finally angry. "We need to talk," read her latest text. "This isn't just about us anymore. The Anderson deal is falling apart without your attention." He stared at the message for a long moment before replying, "Conference room, 4 p.m. When she entered his office later that day, Ariadne was all business. Tailored suit, hair pulled back, expression professionally neutral. Only the tightness around her eyes betrayed any emotion. "The Anderson portfolio is down 12%, she began without preamble, placing a folder on his desk. "They're threatening to pull out entirely if we don't address their concerns by Friday." Jayden nodded, barely processing the information. "I'll call them tomorrow. Will you?" Her professional veneer cracked slightly. "You've been a ghost for 2 weeks. The entire office is whispering about what happened at the ball." His eyes snapped to hers. "What are they saying?" "Nothing specific. Just that you disappeared with someone who wasn't your wife the same night she went into labor." She held his gaze steadily. "I didn't tell anyone if that's what you're worried about. It's not that simple." "Then explain it to me." She sat down across from him, her posture softening slightly. "What happened that night, after you left?" Jayden rubbed his temples, the headache that had become his constant companion intensifying. "Lydia had complications. Emergency C-section. The baby's fine now, but..." He couldn't bring himself to say the rest. Ariadne waited, but when he didn't continue, she sighed. "Look, I never wanted to be the other woman. That night was a mistake, one we both made. But we have a business to run, and you need to pull yourself together." The cool pragmatism in her voice should have been a relief. Instead, it sparked an irrational anger. "A mistake? Is that all it was to you?" Her eyes widened slightly. "What did you expect me to say? That it was worth it? Worth risking your marriage, your reputation, your..." "That's enough." He stood abruptly, unable to hear the truth spoken aloud. "We'll keep things professional from now on. I'll handle Anderson personally." She rose as well, gathering her materials with efficient movements. "Whatever you say, Mr. McCormick." The formality was a wall between them now. At the door, she paused. "For what it's worth, I am sorry about your wife. I hope she recovers fully." The simple expression of sympathy, so undeserved, hit harder than recrimination would have. After she left, Jayden sank back into his chair, staring blankly at the Seattle skyline beyond his window. The empire he'd built, the success he'd chased relentlessly. It all seemed hollow now. His phone buzzed with a new message, this one from Lydia. "Doctor's appointment at 2. Don't worry about coming home early." The dismissal was clear, but he replied anyway. "I'll be there, we can go together." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared before her response came through. "If you insist." At home that evening, Jayden found Lydia in the nursery, gently rocking August. The soft yellow light cast shadows across her face, accentuating the hollows beneath her cheekbones. She had lost weight since the birth, her natural slenderness now veering toward fragility. "How did the appointment go?" he asked, hovering in the doorway. "Fine, physical recovery is on track." Her voice was even, emotionless. "They want me to see someone for postpartum depression. I told them I'd think about it." Jaden stepped into the room, careful to maintain distance. "Maybe that would be good. After everything you've been through." "Everything I've been through," she repeated softly, still looking at August rather than him. That's one way to put it. He recognized the literary technique, the way she separated the words to examine them critically. It was what made her such an insightful professor, this ability to dissect language and find the truth beneath. "Lydia, we need to talk. About that night. About us." She finally looked up, her eyes clear and focused in a way that made him more nervous than her previous detachment. "Madison came by today." The simple statement sent a chill through him. "Oh?" "She's been doing some investigating." Lydia's voice remained calm as she continued rocking August. "She has a friend who works at the Fairmont Olympic. She pulled the security footage from the night of the ball. You left at 11:53 p.m. with a woman in a green dress. You got into your car together." Jaden felt the blood drain from his face. "Lydia, I'm not finished." Her tone remained conversational, as if discussing a novel with her students. "Madison also has photos of an apartment building in Capitol Hill. Apartment 507, registered to Ariadne Mitchell. Your location showed you there until 3:17 a.m., when you finally decided to check your phone and discovered your son had been born." The precision of her knowledge was devastating. There was no room for denial, no space for the half-truths he'd been preparing. "While you were with her," Lydia continued, her voice finally betraying a tremor, "I was experiencing a placental abruption. Do you know what that is, Jaden? It's when the placenta detaches from the uterine wall prematurely. It causes hemorrhaging. It can be fatal for both mother and baby." She stood carefully, placing the now sleeping August in his crib before turning to face Jaden fully. "The doctors couldn't control the bleeding. They performed an emergency hysterectomy to save my life." Her hand pressed against her abdomen unconsciously. "I will never have another child. That decision was made while you were in her bed." The blunt statement hung in the air between them, irrefutable and damning. "I didn't know," Jaden whispered, though he recognized immediately how pathetic it sounded. "If I'd known you were in trouble, you would have what?" Lydia's calm facade finally cracked, her voice rising slightly before she glanced at August and lowered it again. "Left her bed earlier. Checked your phone between rounds? What exactly would you have done differently if you'd known the timing of my medical emergency?" He had no answer that wouldn't compound his betrayal. "Madison found more," she continued after a moment. "Hotel charges on your credit card stretching back 3 months, late-night meetings that don't appear in your official calendar, the apartment you keep downtown that isn't listed in our shared assets." Jaden sank onto the window seat, the full extent of his exposed deceptions overwhelming him. "It wasn't supposed to be like this." "No, I imagine not. You were supposed to get away with it." Lydia turned back to the crib, adjusting August's blanket with gentle hands. "I've contacted a lawyer. He'll be in touch about the divorce proceedings." The word hit like a physical blow. "Divorce? Lydia, please, we can work through this. For August's sake, don't you dare use our son to manipulate me." The flash of anger in her eyes was the most emotion she'd shown in weeks. "You didn't think about August when you were betraying us. You don't get to use him as a shield now." "I made a terrible mistake, the worst mistake of my life." Jaden stood, moving toward her, stopping when she visibly tensed. "But I love you, I love our family." "Love requires loyalty, Jaden. It requires presence. You were absent long before that night." She met his eyes steadily. "Madison is coming tomorrow to help me pack. August and I will be staying with my parents until I find a place of my own." "You're leaving, just like that? Just like that?" Lydia's laugh held no humor. "No, not just like that. After 6 years of marriage, after fertility treatments and loss and finally carrying our son, after believing in you, trusting you, building a life with you, after all that, I'm leaving. There's nothing just like that about it." Jaden felt the foundations of his life crumbling beneath him. "Please, give me a chance to make this right." "That's the thing about some betrayals," she said quietly. "They can't be made right. They can only be survived. She brushed past him, her shoulder avoiding contact with his, and left him standing alone in the nursery with their sleeping son, the soft mobile above the crib turning slowly in the gentle air current, playing a lullaby for a family that was already dissolving. The next morning, Jaden arrived at the office to find Jonathan Pearson, the company's senior partner, waiting in his office. "We need to talk," the older man said without preamble. Jaden braced himself, motioning for Jonathan to sit. "What's on your mind?" "The Anderson account pulled out this morning. Roberts Technologies is reconsidering our partnership, and the waterfront project investors are nervous." Jonathan's expression was grim. "Rumors are flying, Jaden. About you, about your personal life interfering with business." "My personal life is my own business," Jaden replied stiffly. "Not when it affects this company. Not when clients are calling me directly with concerns about your judgment." Jonathan leaned forward. "Seattle is a small town at the top. Word gets around." The implication was clear. Knowledge of his affair was spreading, tainting his professional reputation. "What are you suggesting?" "Take some time off. Let things cool down. Let me handle the major accounts until this blows over." It wasn't a suggestion. It was an ultimatum from the man who had been his mentor, who had backed him when he was starting out. "Fine," Jaden said, the fight gone out of him. "I could use some time with my family anyway." Jonathan's expression softened slightly. "How is your wife? And the baby?" "August is doing well. Lydia is—" He couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't admit that she was packing to leave him, even as they spoke. "Take care of them, Jaden. Some things once broken can't be fixed." The older man stood, clapping him on the shoulder before leaving. Alone in his office, Jaden turned to stare out at the rain-soaked city below. The empire he'd built so carefully was showing cracks, just like every other part of his life. His intercom buzzed. "Ms. Mitchell is here to see you," his assistant announced. Jaden closed his eyes briefly. "Send her in." Ariadne entered, her professional composure slipping as soon as the door closed behind her. Anderson pulled out. "What the hell happened?" "The company is taking a new direction," he replied flatly. "Bullshit. This is about us, isn't it? About that night?" She paced the office, agitation evident in every movement. "I just got called into HR. They're asking questions about our professional relationship. Someone's talking, Jaden." "It doesn't matter anymore." She stopped, studying him with narrowed eyes. "What happened with your wife? What aren't you telling me?" The concern in her voice seemed genuine, which only made it worse. "She had complications during the birth. She nearly died while I was with you." The words were like stones, heavy and cold. Ariadne paled visibly. "My God, I didn't know. No one did, except the medical team. And Madison." He turned back to the window. "And now Lydia knows everything. About us, about the hotels, about all of it. Jaden, I'm so sorry." She moved toward him, stopping when he shook his head. "Don't. This isn't about you anymore. My wife is leaving me, taking our son, filing for divorce." Saying the words aloud made them more real, more devastating. Ariadne was silent for a long moment. "What can I do?" "Nothing. There's nothing anyone can do." He turned to face her, seeing her clearly for the first time in weeks. She was beautiful, intelligent, ambitious, all the things that had drawn him to her. But standing in his crumbling life, he realized she had never been worth what he was losing. "I think it would be best if you transferred to the Los Angeles office," he said finally. "Jonathan can arrange it." Her expression hardened, professional pride reasserting itself. "You're pushing me out? After everything?" "It's not a punishment. It's the only way either of us salvages a career from this mess." "So that's it? A mistake happens and you just discard people?" The hurt in her voice was genuine, but it couldn't touch the hollow place inside him. "We both made choices, Ariadne. Now we live with the consequences." He sat at his desk, dismissal clear in his posture. "I'll recommend you for a senior position in LA. Your work has always been exceptional." She stared at him for a long moment, a complex mix of emotions crossing her face. "You know what? I feel sorry for your wife, but I feel sorry for you too. You've lost more than a marriage, you've lost yourself." With that, she turned and left, the door closing with quiet finality behind her. When Jaden arrived home that evening, the house felt different immediately. The absence wasn't physical yet. Lydia's car was still in the garage, lights were on in the kitchen, but he could feel it in the air, like the pressure drop before a storm. He found Madison in the nursery, carefully packing baby clothes into a suitcase. She looked up when he entered, her expression hardening. "Where is she?" he asked. "Finishing in the bedroom. Though it's none of your business anymore." He ignored the barb. "You had no right to interfere in our marriage." Madison straightened, facing him fully. "Interfere? You destroyed your marriage all by yourself, Jaden. I just made sure Lydia knew what kind of man she was married to. You've never liked me. Never thought I was good enough for her. And I was right, wasn't I?" She folded a tiny onesie with precise movements. "You know what the worst part is? She defended you for years. Every time I questioned your late nights or business trips, she stood up for you. Her loyalty to you was absolute." The truth of it cut deep. Lydia had trusted him completely, had never once questioned his fidelity, despite the signs that now seemed so obvious. "I need to talk to her," he said, turning toward the master bedroom. Madison stepped in his way. "Haven't you done enough?" "Get out of my way, Madison. This is between me and my wife. Ex-wife, soon enough." But she stepped aside, her point made. Jaden found Lydia in their closet, methodically removing clothes from hangers and placing them in suitcases. August was asleep in a portable bassinet nearby. The scene was so domestic, so ordinary, that for a moment he could pretend this was just a trip, not a permanent departure. "You don't have to go," he said from the doorway. Lydia didn't look up. "Yes, I do. This is your home. I'll leave. You and August should stay here." "This was never my home," she replied, folding a sweater with careful precision. "It was yours. Your design, your taste, your statement to the world about who Jaden McCormick is. I just lived here." The observation was painfully accurate. The house had been his project from the beginning, a showcase more than a home. "Where will you go?" he asked. "My parents, for now. Then I'm looking at a faculty apartment near the university." She finally met his eyes. "I've taken a leave of absence for the semester, but I'll be teaching again in January." He admired her calm planning, even as it terrified him. These decisions made without him. This future she was building that didn't include him. What about August? The question was barely audible. Something softened in her expression. "He needs his father, Jaden. I'm not trying to keep him from you, but I need time. We both do." Relief flooded him, followed immediately by shame. He didn't deserve her reasonableness, her continued belief that he could be a good father despite being a terrible husband. "I'll do whatever you want," he said. "Whatever you need. What I need is for you to mean it this time." She closed the suitcase, zipping it with finality. For August's sake, if not for mine. The implication was clear. She believed he had never truly meant his promises to her, and he couldn't honestly argue against it. "Can I hold him before you go?" he asked, glancing at the sleeping infant. Lydia nodded, stepping back to allow him access to the bassinet. Carefully, Jaden lifted his son, cradling him against his chest, with a tenderness that surprised even him. August's eyes flickered open briefly, then closed again, trusting completely in the arms that held him. The weight of that trust was almost unbearable. "I'm so sorry," Jaden whispered, pressing his lips to the baby's forehead. It wasn't clear if he was speaking to August or to Lydia, or perhaps to both of them. Lydia watched silently, her expression unreadable. When he finally placed August back in the bassinet, she spoke softly. "The lawyer will contact you next week with the preliminary divorce papers. I'm asking for primary custody, with generous visitation for you." The businesslike tone was a shield, he realized, her way of maintaining control when everything else was chaos. "I'll sign whatever you want," he said, "but I want you to know I'll fight for us, Lydia. I'll do whatever it takes." She looked at him for a long moment, something like pity in her eyes. "That's the problem, Jaden. It's too late. What it would have taken was fidelity, honesty, presence, all the things you couldn't give me when they actually mattered." Madison appeared in the doorway. "The car's packed. Ready when you are." Lydia nodded, turning back to Jaden one last time. "Goodbye, Jaden." He watched helplessly as Madison lifted the bassinet, as Lydia picked up her suitcase, as they walked out of the bedroom they had shared for 6 years. The sound of the front door closing echoed through the empty house like a final judgment. Jaden stood alone in the closet, surrounded by the remaining clothes, the vacant hangers where Lydia's things had been, the lingering scent of her perfume already fading. The perfect life he had constructed was collapsing around him, and he had no one to blame but himself. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal meetings, empty rooms, and sleepless nights. Jaden went through the motions at work, where rumors continued to circulate despite Jonathan's efforts to contain them. Clients who had once sought his advice now requested other partners. His phone rarely rang with the social invitations that had once filled his calendar. Ariadne had accepted the transfer to Los Angeles, leaving a professional void in the office and a personal one that Jaden was surprised to find he barely noticed. What had seemed so irresistible, so worth risking everything for, now appeared hollow and meaningless compared to what he had lost. He saw August during scheduled visitations, awkward hours in the sterile environment of his Medina home, struggling to connect with an infant who regarded him with curious, uncomprehending eyes. Lydia arranged the visits through a co-parenting app, their direct communication reduced to brief, practical exchanges about August's needs and schedule. The divorce papers arrived as promised, the legal language transforming 6 years of marriage into a clinical dissolution of assets and responsibilities. Jaden read through them in his empty home office, a glass of whiskey untouched beside him. The terms were fair, even generous. Lydia wanted nothing from him financially beyond child support and funds for August's future education. He signed without contesting a single point, faxing the papers back to his lawyer with instructions to expedite the process. If this was what Lydia wanted, he would give it to her without a fight. It was the least he could do. That night, he walked through the silent house, a specter in his own life. In August's nursery, he stood looking at the empty crib, the carefully chosen decorations now serving no purpose. In the master bathroom, Lydia's absence was marked by empty drawers and bare countertops where her cosmetics had once stood. Everywhere he looked, he saw the wreckage of what they had built together and the vast emptiness of what remained. On a sudden impulse, he drove into the city, to the downtown apartment he had maintained as a private retreat, the place Lydia had never seen, but now knew about. It was a sleek, minimalist space with views of Elliott Bay, the backdrop for his infidelities, the secret chamber of his double life. He stood in the center of the living room, seeing it through Lydia's eyes. The expensive furnishings, the wet bar, the king-sized bed visible through the bedroom door. It was a monument to his betrayal, a physical manifestation of his failures as a husband. In the bedroom, he opened the nightstand drawer, finding a pair of Ariadne's earrings she had left behind months ago. He held them in his palm, these tiny tokens of transgression that had cost him everything. Then, with sudden determination, he began emptying drawers, closets, every space that held remnants of his secret life. The purge was cathartic, each discarded item a small acknowledgement of his culpability. When the apartment was bare of personal belongings, he called a real estate agent, leaving instructions to list the property immediately. It wasn't redemption, nothing so simple or clean, but it was a start, a small step toward the man he needed to become for his son, if no longer for his wife. Back at the Medina house, a FedEx envelope waited on the front step. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note in Madison's unmistakable script. "Jaden, Lydia doesn't know I'm sending this. She probably wouldn't approve, but you should see what your son has been doing while you've been drowning in self-pity. Maybe it will wake you up." He plugged the drive into his laptop, bracing himself for whatever Madison thought would wake him up. The video began playing, August lying on a playmat, Lydia's voice cooing encouragement from behind the camera. The baby was smiling, a real smile, not the reflexive ones of his earliest weeks. Then came a burst of laughter, a sound Jaden had never heard from his son. The video continued with small moments, August tracking a toy with focused eyes, Lydia reading to him, his tiny hand grasping her finger. Ordinary, magnificent moments of development that Jaden was missing, catalogued with methodical precision by the woman who had once shared his life and now documented their son's milestones without him. The final clip showed August asleep in Lydia's arms, her face finally visible as she gazed down at him with pure love. She looked tired but peaceful, her features softened by a maternal tenderness that Jaden had glimpsed only briefly before their world exploded. As the video ended, Jaden sat in stunned silence. Madison's message was clear. Life was continuing without him. August was growing, changing, becoming a person, while Jaden remained trapped in the wreckage of his past choices. With shaking hands, he opened his email and began typing a message to Lydia. "I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but please, could I see August more often? I'm missing too much. I'll come to your parents' house, meet wherever you're comfortable. I just need to be part of his life. I need to be his father, even if I failed as your husband." He stared at the words for a long time before pressing send uncertainty and hope warring within him. Then he did something he hadn't done since childhood, since the days when his father would lead family prayers in their modest Eastern Washington home. He closed his eyes and asked for help, for guidance, for strength to become someone worthy of his son's trust. It wasn't a formal prayer. He'd abandoned such structures long ago. But in the silent house that had once held his perfect life, Jaden McCormick finally faced the truth that had eluded him for so long. He couldn't rebuild what he had destroyed, but perhaps if he were lucky, he could build something new from the ruins. His phone chimed with an incoming email. Lydia's response was brief but clear. August and I have moved into a rental house near Green Lake. You can see him this Saturday. I'll text you the address. 10 a.m. Bring diapers, size 2. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was a door slightly ajar to a future he hadn't dared hope for. One where he might still be a father to his son, even if he could never again be a husband to Lydia. For the first time in weeks, Jaden felt something like purpose stirring within him. Not the hollow ambition that had driven him for so long, but something deeper, more essential. The desire to be the man his son would need him to be, the man he should have been all along. 8 months after August's birth, Seattle settled into its typical May pattern. Sporadic sunshine breaking through persistent cloud cover, the city vibrant with renewed life after the long grey winter. Jaden's life had settled into patterns as well, though none resembling the carefully structured existence he'd once maintained. The divorce had been finalized 3 months earlier with surprising efficiency, accelerated by Jaden's uncontested acceptance of all terms. He had kept the Medina house, but found himself unable to sleep in the master bedroom, eventually moving into the guest suite that felt appropriately impersonal. His office remained his primary residence, the long hours a convenient excuse to avoid the hollow echoes of his empty home. Every Saturday morning, Jaden drove to the modest craftsman-style house near Green Lake, where Lydia and August now lived. The first few visits had been supervised by a family counselor, a humiliating but necessary arrangement, given Lydia's concerns about his reliability. He had arrived exactly on time each week, bearing whatever supplies Lydia had requested, prepared with questions about August's development and health. Today marked the first unsupervised visit, a milestone he'd worked toward with diligence and patience, unlike anything he'd shown in his professional life. He usually naps around one, Lydia said, handing over August along with a diaper bag meticulously organized with labeled compartments. At 10 months old, their son was solid and sturdy, with Jaden's dark hair and Lydia's thoughtful eyes. He's been fighting it lately, so good luck. We'll be fine, Jaden assured her, adjusting August on his hip with growing confidence. These awkward handoffs had become their primary interaction, civil, focused entirely on their son, devoid of any personal connection. Lydia looked tired, the demands of single motherhood and her return to teaching evident in the shadows beneath her eyes. She wore her hair shorter now, a practical bob that framed her face differently than the long waves she'd maintained throughout their marriage. It was one of many small changes that reminded Jaden that her life continued to evolve without him. "I'll have him back by 5, he promised, noting how she checked her watch subtly. "Are you going somewhere?" The question felt intrusive, even as he asked it. "Faculty gathering," she replied without elaboration. "Remember, he's been trying solid foods, but nothing with honey or peanuts yet." "I remember." He had an entire notebook filled with August's preferences, schedules and developmental milestones, information once collected through the co-parenting app, but now committed to memory through diligent study. She nodded, placing a quick kiss on August's cheek before stepping back. "Have fun with Daddy," she told their son, her voice softening as it always did when she spoke to August. Jaden felt the familiar pang at the careful way she maintained boundaries, never using his name, always referring to him as Daddy when speaking to August. It was appropriate, professional, and profoundly lonely. As he secured August in the car seat of his new SUV, the sports car traded in for something more suitable for fatherhood, he glimpsed Madison pulling into the driveway. Her timing was never coincidental. She invariably arrived just as he was leaving, a self-appointed guardian ensuring the exchange went smoothly. She nodded curtly as they passed each other, her antipathy undiminished by time. "Back by 5, McCormick, not 5:01. He swallowed the retort that rose to his lips. Antagonizing Madison would only complicate his fragile arrangement with Lydia. "Of course." In the rearview mirror, he watched Madison embrace Lydia. The easy affection between them a stark reminder of the bonds that remained intact while his lay shattered. Downtown, McCormick Investments occupied the same prestigious office space, but the energy had shifted palpably. 3 major clients had withdrawn their portfolios in the months following Jayden's public disgrace. The waterfront project, once the crown jewel of his development plans, had been assumed by a competitor who promptly renamed it. Jonathan had taken over most of Jayden's client relationships, an arrangement that had begun as temporary but was increasingly looking permanent. Ariadne had thrived in Los Angeles, her professional reputation apparently unscathed by the Seattle scandal. Occasionally, Jayden would see her name on company-wide emails, announcing new acquisitions or successful deals. He felt nothing upon reading them, neither regret nor lingering attachment. The passion that had seemed so irresistible, so worth risking everything for, now appeared as insubstantial as morning fog burned away by harsh reality. On Monday morning, he arrived at the office to find Jonathan waiting, expression grave. "The board meeting's been moved up," the older man informed him without preamble. "Thursday instead of next week." Jayden nodded, unsurprised. The quarterly numbers were abysmal, their worst performance since the company's founding. "They want my resignation." It wasn't a question, but Jonathan answered anyway. "They want options. The company's reputation has taken a hit. Some feel new leadership might help. Some meaning you," Jayden observed without rancor. Jonathan didn't deny it. "You built something incredible here, Jayden. No one disputes that. But businesses are fragile things, like trust." The parallel wasn't subtle. Jayden had destroyed trust in multiple domains of his life with equal efficiency. "I'll prepare a statement," he said, moving toward his office. "Jayden," Jonathan's voice stopped him. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry it came to this, personally and professionally." The sympathy felt worse than condemnation. Jayden nodded once, unable to form a response that wouldn't sound pathetically self-pitying. That evening, alone in his empty house, Jayden poured himself a whiskey and carried it out to the deck overlooking Lake Washington. The spring sunset painted the water in shades of orange and gold, a beauty that seemed to mock his personal darkness. His phone rang, his mother's face appearing on the screen. He hesitated before answering. "Hi, Mom." "Jayden." Eleanor McCormick's voice carried the slight Eastern Washington accent he'd worked so hard to erase from his own speech. "I was beginning to think you were avoiding my calls." He had been, though not consciously. His parents' quiet disappointment was harder to bear than Madison's open hostility. "Sorry, work's been complicated." "So I've heard." The gentle reproach was worse than anger would have been. "Your father would have had plenty to say about all this." "No doubt." Pastor David McCormick had never approved of his son's cutthroat business tactics or materialistic lifestyle, even before his death 3 years earlier. The scandal would have confirmed his worst fears about the path Jayden had chosen. "I'm sure he would," Jayden agreed quietly. A pause, then, "How's my grandson?" The change of subject was merciful, growing fast. He's almost crawling now. "And Lydia?" The question made his chest tighten. "She's managing, back teaching. They're doing well." His mother sighed. "You know, when your father made mistakes, and he made plenty being human like the rest of us, he always said the same thing. The depth of my fall measures the height I must climb to make amends." The quotation sounded like his father, biblical in cadence, practical in application. "I'm trying, Mom, but some things can't be fixed." "Perhaps not fixed," she acknowledged, "but transformed. Different doesn't have to mean worse, Jayden." After they'd said their goodbyes, Jayden remained on the deck until darkness fell, his mother's words echoing in his mind. Transformation required acknowledging the depth of his fall, something he'd been avoiding with workaholic determination. The next morning he did something unprecedented. He called in sick. Then he made another call, to a therapist whose card had sat untouched in his wallet since the family counselor had recommended him months earlier. Dr. Michael Chen's office overlooked Pioneer Square, its decor subtle and calming, without the sterile feeling of a medical facility. The therapist himself was younger than Jayden had expected, perhaps in his early 40s, with an attentive manner that neither judged nor absolved. "What brings you here today, Mr. McCormick?" he asked after the preliminaries were complete. Jayden had rehearsed various answers, all sounding either self-serving or melodramatic in his mind. What emerged instead was raw truth. "I destroyed my marriage. I'm about to lose my company. I barely know my son, and I have no idea who I am without the things I've lost." Dr. Chen nodded, making a brief note. "That's quite a comprehensive inventory. Where would you like to begin?" The question was so simple yet so profound. Where indeed? The affair that had been the catalyst, or the character flaws that had made it possible? The professional ambition that had driven him, or the emptiness it had been attempting to fill? "I don't know how to be a good father when I failed so completely as a husband," he admitted finally. "Those are different relationships with different requirements," Dr. Chen observed, "though they can certainly influence each other. Tell me about your son." Jaden found himself talking about August, the way he smelled after a bath, his determined expression when attempting to crawl, how his entire face transformed when he smiled. Simple observations that revealed more about Jaden's attachment than he'd realized existed. "You speak about him with genuine love," Dr. Chen noted. "That's a foundation many fathers lack." "Love isn't enough," Jaden countered. "My father loved me, but his disapproval shaped me more than his affection." Dr. Chen leaned forward slightly. "And how did that shape you exactly?" The question opened floodgates. Jaden spoke of growing up in a strict Christian household in eastern Washington, where his father's position as pastor had placed the family under constant scrutiny. He described his rebellion through achievement, excelling academically, winning scholarships, escaping to Seattle, where success was measured by wealth rather than moral purity. "I built my life in opposition to his values," Jaden realized aloud. "Every dollar I earned, every acquisition, every status symbol, they were arguments against his belief that wealth corrupts the soul." "And did you win that argument?" Dr. Chen asked quietly. Jaden's laugh held no humor. "Spectacularly lost it, I'd say. He warned me that ambition without moral foundation would leave me empty. I didn't believe him until I'd lost everything that actually mattered." "Not everything," Dr. Chen reminded him. "You still have a relationship with your son. You have your intelligence, your capabilities. You have time, perhaps the most valuable resource of all." The observation was simple, but profound. At 38, Jaden wasn't at the end of his story, but at a painful middle chapter, one that could precede redemption or further decline, depending on choices yet unmade. As the session concluded, Dr. Chen posed a question. What would success look like for you now? Not in the past or in some hypothetical future where your mistakes are undone, but now, in the life you actually have. Jaden considered this on the drive home, the Seattle skyline gleaming in the distance. His previous definition of success, wealth, status, admiration, felt hollow now. What would success look like in this broken, humbled version of his life? Being the father August deserved. Being a man of integrity, even without an audience to impress. Building something meaningful from the ruins of what he'd destroyed. The clarity was both terrifying and liberating. 2 days later, Jaden stood before the company's board of directors, his resignation letter prepared but unopened in a folder before him. "Before you ask for this," he said, gesturing to the folder, "I'd like to propose an alternative." The 7 board members exchanged glances, surprise evident on their faces. They had expected capitulation, not negotiation. "McCormick Investments needs a fresh start," Jaden continued. "I agree with that assessment, but what if that fresh start included restructuring rather than replacement?" He outlined his proposal succinctly. Jonathan would assume the role of CEO, becoming the public face of the company. Jaden would step back to Chief Strategy Officer, focusing on the financial architecture of deals rather than client relationships. His salary would be reduced by 40%, with those funds redirected to a new initiative, sustainable development projects in underserved Seattle neighborhoods. This approach addresses the reputation issues without losing the strategic vision that built this company, he concluded, and it demonstrates our commitment to the community we serve. Jonathan studied him with newfound respect. "This is unexpected. I've had cause for significant reflection recently," Jaden replied simply. After the board voted to accept his proposal with minor modifications, Jonathan caught up with him in the hallway. That was either brilliant strategy or remarkable humility. "I'm not sure which." "Maybe both," Jaden suggested, with the first genuine smile he'd managed in months. "My father used to say that true wisdom begins when we can hold contradictory truths without discarding either." Jonathan raised an eyebrow. "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He was," Jaden acknowledged. I should have listened to him more while I had the chance. Summer arrived in Seattle with uncharacteristic warmth, the city shedding layers both literally and figuratively as residents embraced the precious sunny days. Jaden's life had developed new rhythms, 3 days at the office in his diminished but focused role, weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Chen, and increasingly frequent visits with August, who had recently celebrated his first birthday. The party had been a surprisingly cordial affair held at Lydia's parents' home in Tacoma. Jaden had arrived bearing an age-appropriate gift, carefully researched, and prepared for Madison's usual coldness. To his surprise, she had been civil, even helping him find a plate when the buffet was served. "Madison seems less homicidal toward me lately," he observed to Lydia as they watched August smear cake across his face with delighted abandon. Lydia's smile was small but genuine. "She's less worried about me these days. Makes her less protective." It was the closest thing to a personal conversation they'd had in months. "You seem good," he ventured carefully. "The teaching, the new house, it suits you." "It's getting easier," she acknowledged. "Not what I planned, but—" She shrugged, leaving the sentence unfinished. Jaden wanted to ask more. If she was dating, if she still thought about their life together, if she could ever forgive him, but respected the boundaries she'd established. Instead, he focused on August, capturing photos of his cake-covered face and eliciting belly laughs with silly expressions. Later that evening, reviewing the pictures alone in his home office, Jaden was struck by how much joy August's simple existence brought him. The love he felt for his son had become the gravitational center of his life, realigning his priorities with quiet but inexorable force. He emailed several photos to Lydia with a brief message. "Thank you for including me today. He's incredible." Her reply came an hour later. "He has your smile and your determination. Not a combination I always appreciate at bedtime, but it will serve him well in life." The observation that she saw him in their son and considered some of those inherited traits valuable felt like an unexpected gift. By August's 15-month mark, the supervised visits had long since ended, replaced by a regular schedule that included overnight stays at Jaden's home every other weekend. He had transformed the guest room into a proper nursery, consulted child development experts about age-appropriate activities, and even joined a support group for divorced fathers, a level of humility the old Jaden would have found inconceivable. His professional life had stabilized in his new role. Without the pressure of being the company's public face, he found himself enjoying the strategic work more, finding satisfaction in the elegant architecture of complex deals rather than the ego boost of closing them. Dr. Chen had noted the change during their sessions. "You're building a life based on different values than before," he observed. "How does that feel?" "Quieter," Jaden admitted. "Less dramatic, but more authentic, I guess. Like I'm not performing anymore." "And your relationship with Lydia?" Jaden considered the question carefully. "Co-parents, not friends. Civil. Functional. Better than I deserve, honestly." "You use that phrase often. Better than I deserve. It suggests you're still punishing yourself." "Shouldn't I be?" Dr. Chen's expression remained neutral. "Punishment without purpose is just self-indulgence. The question is whether your self-condemnation serves any constructive purpose for you, for your son, or for Lydia." The observation lingered with Jaden as he prepared for August's weekend visit. He had planned a trip to the Seattle Aquarium, which August had recently become fascinated with through a picture book about ocean creatures. When Lydia dropped August off, she seemed distracted, checking her phone repeatedly. "Everything okay?" Jaden asked as he settled August in his high chair for a snack. "Fine," she replied quickly, then sighed. "Actually, no. The department chair scheduled a last-minute faculty meeting for Monday morning, and my childcare fell through. My regular sitter is out of town, and Madison has a court date she can't reschedule." Jaden saw an opportunity to be genuinely helpful. "I could keep August until Monday afternoon. Take him to daycare in the morning, pick him up after." Lydia hesitated, clearly weighing her limited options. "You'd need to drop him at Bright Horizons by 8. They have all his information on file." "I can do that," Jaden assured her. "I've shifted my schedule to start later on Mondays anyway." This was true. He deliberately restructured his work week to accommodate potential parenting needs. "Okay," she agreed finally. "Thank you. This helps a lot." The simple acknowledgement that he could be helpful rather than harmful in her life, felt like a small but significant shift. The weekend with August was filled with small joys. His excitement at the aquarium's jellyfish display, his determined attempts to pronounce octopus, his peaceful breathing as he slept in the nursery Jaden had created for him. On Sunday afternoon, they visited the playground at Green Lake, where August's fearless approach to the toddler slide both terrified and delighted Jaden. "He's getting so confident," observed an older woman sharing the bench where Jaden watched closely. "Is he your first?" "Yes," Jaden replied, smiling as August climbed the small steps again. "My only. Treasure these moments," she advised. "They're gone before you know it." Jaden nodded, fully present in a way he'd rarely been during his marriage. The irony wasn't lost on him, that he'd learned to appreciate life's simple pleasures only after losing the family structure he'd taken for granted. Monday morning went smoothly, the daycare drop-off executed with minimal tears, mostly August's, though Jaden felt a few of his own as he walked away. At work, he found himself checking his phone frequently, a habit Lydia had likely developed months earlier. When he picked August up that afternoon, the daycare director met him with an unexpected observation. "He did wonderfully today, much less separation anxiety than usual." Jaden hadn't realized August struggled with their separations. "That happens often?" "Oh, most Mondays are pretty tough for him," she explained, "but today was much smoother. Maybe it helped having the same parent for drop-off as his weekend visit, instead of the usual transition." The insight gave Jaden a strange sense of accomplishment, that his presence could provide stability rather than disruption in his son's life. When Lydia arrived to collect August that evening, she seemed surprised by the detailed report Jaden provided: what August had eaten, how long he'd napped, which activities he'd enjoyed at daycare. "You're really on top of this," she noted, watching him gather August's belongings with practiced efficiency. "I'm trying," he said simply. "I want to be good at this. He deserves that." Something shifted in her expression, not quite warmth, but perhaps a reassessment. "Yes, he does." As they transferred August to her car, she hesitated before saying, "My department has a monthly faculty meeting. Same schedule conflict. If you wanted to, if it works for you." "I'd be happy to take him those Mondays," Jaden offered immediately. "Just let me know the dates." The arrangement wasn't friendship or forgiveness, but it was cooperation, a shared recognition that August's well-being transcended their broken relationship. As autumn returned to Seattle, painting the city in russet and gold, Jaden felt cautiously optimistic for the first time in over a year. His therapy sessions had decreased to bi-weekly, his new professional role had stabilized, and his relationship with August deepened with each visit. Even Madison had thawed slightly, occasionally engaging in brief conversations during handoffs rather than monitoring him with silent suspicion. At August's pediatrician appointment, which they'd both attended awkwardly, she had actually backed Jaden's observation about August's apparent strawberry sensitivity, a minor alliance, but significant in its normality. "You know," she told him afterward in the parking lot, "you're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" he asked, genuinely curious. Madison considered this, her usual bluntness tempered by what might have been reluctant respect. "I expected you to lose interest once the novelty of playing devoted father wore off, to prioritize work or dating or whatever else inflated your ego." The assessment stung, but Jaden couldn't deny its foundation in his past behavior. "I deserved that assumption." "Yes, you did," she agreed without hesitation, "but assumptions can be wrong." With that limited acknowledgement, she left. The conversation apparently concluded to her satisfaction. That evening, Jaden called his mother, their weekly conversations having become a renewed constant in his life. After updating her on August's latest developments, he found himself sharing his cautious sense of progress. "I think I'm finding my way back," he told her. "Not to what I had before, that's gone, but to something real, something better maybe." "That's the thing about rock bottom," Eleanor said gently. "The only direction left is up. Your father would be proud of how you're rebuilding, Jaden." The approval warmed him in a way professional accolades never had. "Thanks, Mum, that means a lot." Later, preparing for bed in the master suite he'd finally reclaimed from avoidance, Jaden felt a strange sense of peace. The path forward wasn't clear or guaranteed, but for the first time since August's birth, he felt capable of walking it with integrity. He checked his phone one last time to find a text from Lydia with a photo of August sleeping. tiny fist clutching the stuffed otter Jayden had bought him at the aquarium. The message read simply, "He insisted on taking Daddy's otter to bed tonight." The simple moment of connection, Lydia acknowledging his place in their son's life, sharing this small detail she didn't have to share, felt like validation of the changes he'd worked so hard to make. As Seattle's autumn rain pattered against the windows, Jayden McCormick drifted to sleep with the unfamiliar but welcome feeling that he was finally becoming the man his son deserved, and perhaps someday the man Lydia might not regret having once loved. What he couldn't see, in his cautious optimism, were the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. The past rarely releases its grip without a final reckoning, and Jayden's moment of accounting was approaching with the quiet inevitability of the tide. Winter descended on Seattle with unusual ferocity, blanketing the city in snow that transformed its steep hills into treacherous slopes. Jayden navigated the icy roads carefully, August securely fastened in his car seat as they returned from their weekend together. The toddler, now approaching 18 months, babbled happily about no man and tweeze, his vocabulary expanding weekly. As they pulled up to Lydia's house, Jayden noticed an unfamiliar car in the driveway, a sensible Subaru Outback with University of Washington parking permits on the windshield. His stomach tightened instinctively. "Looks like Mommy has company," he said casually to August, who was occupied with a stuffed penguin. Madison greeted them at the door, taking August with practiced ease. "How was your weekend, big guy?" "Fishies," August declared, referring to their visit to the aquarium, now a favorite routine. "Lydia's in the kitchen," Madison told Jayden, her tone neutral, but her eyes communicating something unspoken. "She'll want to talk to you." Jayden followed the sound of conversation and laughter to the kitchen, where Lydia stood next to a tall man with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses. They were making pasta together, moving around each other with the easy coordination of people accustomed to sharing space. Lydia looked up, her smile fading slightly as she transitioned between worlds. "Oh, hi. You're right on time." "Always," Jayden replied, his eyes fixed on the stranger. "August had a great weekend. He's really into the penguin exhibit now." "Jayden, this is Dr. Daniel Harmon," Lydia said, gesturing to the man beside her. "He's the new department chair in classical studies. Daniel, this is August's father, Jayden." Daniel wiped his hands on a kitchen towel before extending one to Jayden. "Good to finally meet you. I've heard so much about August." The deliberate phrasing, "about August, not about Jayden," was subtle but clear. This man knew exactly who Jayden was and what he had done. "Nice to meet you," Jayden managed, shaking the offered hand with professional courtesy that masked the sudden hollow feeling in his chest. Lydia seemed tense, her movements more deliberate as she checked the pasta. "Daniel and I were just making dinner. There's something I wanted to discuss with you, actually. Do you have a minute?" "Of course." Jayden followed her to the living room, hyper-aware of Daniel remaining in the kitchen, respectfully giving them space while remaining within earshot, the behavior of someone who had a right to be there. "I wanted to let you know that I've applied for a visiting fellowship at Oxford for next fall semester," Lydia said without preamble. "It's a significant opportunity for my research on Victorian women's literature." Jayden absorbed this, immediately calculating what it meant for August, for him. Oxford, as in England. Yes, she met his eyes directly. It would be September through December, 4 months. And August? The question hung between them, heavy with implications. "He would come with me, of course." She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a nervous gesture he recognized from their marriage. "I know this affects your time with him. That's why I wanted to discuss it early, though I won't know for certain until March if I've been accepted." Jayden felt as though the floor had dropped away beneath him. 4 months without seeing his son. 4 months during which August might forget his face, his voice, their routines together. "That's a long time at his age," he said carefully. "Development happens so quickly, he might not—" "Remember you," Lydia finished. "I've thought of that. We'd arrange video calls, regular communication, and you could potentially visit." The reasonable tone of her voice made it worse somehow. This wasn't spite or revenge, just Lydia continuing her life, pursuing her career, making decisions as August's primary parent. Decisions that necessarily impacted Jayden, but didn't require his approval. "I see." He struggled to maintain composure. "When would you decide?" "The acceptance notifications come in March, and I'd need to confirm by April." From the kitchen, Daniel called. Water's boiling over, Lyd. The casual nickname struck Jayden like a physical blow. Lyd, the intimacy of it, the comfort. This wasn't a new acquaintance. This was someone who had become significant in Lydia's life. I should go, he said abruptly. Let me know when you hear about the fellowship. In the entryway, he knelt to kiss August goodbye, holding him a moment longer than usual. I love you, buddy. Daddy will see you very soon. As he left, he glimpsed through the window the tableau forming in his absence. Madison and August returning to the kitchen, Daniel helping the toddler into his high chair, Lydia laughing at something Madison said, a complete family unit, functioning perfectly without him. The next morning, Jayden sat in Jonathan's office, staring at the proposal before him with unseeing eyes. It's the opportunity we've been waiting for, Jonathan was saying. Samsung wants a flagship development in South Lake Union. Sustainable design, mixed use, the works. They specifically requested you to lead the strategy. 6 months earlier, this would have been cause for celebration. A major international client, a prestigious project, personal vindication after his professional setbacks. Now Jayden found himself unmoved. The timeline is aggressive, he noted, flipping through the requirements. 20 months from approval to completion, which means round-the-clock commitment from the strategy team for the first 6 months at minimum. You'd need to be all in on this, Jayden. All in. The same level of professional obsession that had contributed to his marriage's destruction. The same prioritization of work over personal relationships that had defined his former self. I don't know if I can commit to that schedule, Jayden said slowly. My custody arrangement with August would need adjustments, Jonathan finished, his expression sympathetic but firm. Look, I understand your priorities have shifted, but this is the kind of project that re-establishes careers. Your career, specifically. Jayden stared out the window at the Seattle skyline, so familiar yet suddenly foreign. Can I think about it? Jonathan nodded, though his disappointment was evident. Take 48 hours, but Samsung needs an answer by Wednesday. In Dr. Chen's office that afternoon, Jayden paced as he described his dilemma. If I take on the Samsung project, I'll have to scale back time with August. If Lydia gets this Oxford fellowship, I could lose months with him altogether. And if neither of those things were factors? Dr. Chen asked. What would you want professionally? The question gave Jayden pause. I don't know anymore. The prestige, the challenge, they mattered so much before. Now they feel hollow compared to an afternoon at the playground with August. It's not necessarily an either-or situation, Dr. Chen observed. Many parents balance demanding careers with present parenting. Lydia's moving on, Jayden said abruptly, the real source of his distress finally emerging. There's someone new, a professor. They seemed comfortable together. Dr. Chen let the statement hang in the air. And how does that make you feel? Like I've been replaced. Like August will have a new father figure who gets to be there daily while I'm relegated to weekends and video calls. Jayden's voice cracked slightly. I keep thinking I've accepted the consequences of my actions. And then something new blindsides me. Did you expect Lydia to remain single? No. Yes, I don't know. Jayden ran a hand through his hair in frustration. I want her to be happy. I just didn't expect it to hurt like this. Because you still love her, Dr. Chen said simply. The observation landed with the force of revelation. Beneath the guilt, the shame, the careful rebuilding of his life, the truth remained. He loved Lydia still, perhaps more genuinely than he had during their marriage. It doesn't matter, Jayden said finally. She's moved on. I need to respect that and focus on being the best father I can to August, even from a distance. As he left the session, his phone rang. Lydia's ringtone, distinctive and rarely heard these days. His heart raced as he answered. Jayden, it's August. Her voice was tight with panic. He has a fever of 104 and he's having trouble breathing. I'm taking him to Children's Hospital. Can you meet us there? I'm on my way, he said, already running toward his car. The pediatric emergency room hummed with controlled urgency, medical staff moving with practiced efficiency, while anxious parents waited for news. Jayden found Lydia in a curtained bay, holding August as a doctor listened to his chest. The toddler's face was flushed with fever, his breathing labored and wheezy. Pneumonia, the doctor was explaining as Jayden approached. The X-ray shows a significant infection in his right lung. We'll start IV antibiotics immediately and admit him for observation. Lydia looked up, relief washing over her face as she saw Jayden. You're here. Of course. He moved to August's side, his heart constricting at how small and vulnerable his son looked in the large hospital bed. "Hey, buddy. Daddy's here now." August's eyes, glazed with fever, focused on him briefly. "Daddy," he whimpered, reaching a small hand toward him. The next hours blurred together. August's admission to the pediatric ward, the insertion of an IV line that made him scream in pain and confusion, the parade of medical professionals with updates and questions. Through it all, Jaden and Lydia maintained a united front, tag-teaming comfort duty and information gathering with the synchronicity of long practice. By midnight, August had finally fallen into a restless sleep, his breathing eased somewhat by medication and the humidified oxygen flowing through a nasal cannula. Jaden and Lydia sat on opposite sides of his bed, both unwilling to leave, even as exhaustion settled over them. "You should get some rest," Jaden told her, noting the dark circles under her eyes. "I can stay with him." Lydia shook her head. "I couldn't sleep anyway." After a pause, she added, "Thank you for coming so quickly." "You never have to thank me for that," he said quietly. "He's my son too." The simplicity of the statement hung between them, an acknowledgement of the unbreakable connection they would always share, regardless of what had happened between them. As the night deepened, they talked more than they had in months, about August's development, his emerging personality, the small details of his life that they each observed from their different vantage points. In the strange liminal space of the hospital room, the barriers between them seemed temporarily lowered by shared concern. "Daniel seems nice," Jaden said finally, the words emerging before he could reconsider. Lydia looked up, surprised by the direction. "He is. He's been very understanding about everything. How long have you been seeing him?" She hesitated, clearly weighing how much to share. "About 4 months. It started as professional collaboration on a research project. It evolved gradually." Jaden nodded, absorbing this. "Does August like him?" "He does. Daniel has 2 grown daughters from his previous marriage, so he's comfortable with children." She studied Jaden's face in the dim light. "Is that why you're asking? You're worried about August?" "Partially," he admitted, "and partially I don't know. It's strange seeing you build a new life." "A life I never planned to build," she reminded him gently. "A life I was forced to create after you destroyed our original one." The quiet statement, delivered without anger but with absolute conviction, silenced him. There was no counter-argument, no defense, only acknowledgement. "I know," he said finally, "and I'm glad you found someone who makes you happy." She looked at him for a long moment, as if searching for insincerity and finding none. "Thank you for saying that." August stirred between them, whimpering in his sleep. They both reached to comfort him, their hands brushing briefly over his small body, a moment of connection through their shared creation. 3 days later, August was discharged with a clean bill of health and a course of oral antibiotics. The brief crisis had passed, but it had forged a new level of communication between Jaden and Lydia, a reminder of their permanent connection through their son. As life returned to normal, Jaden made his decision about the Samsung project. In Jonathan's office, he laid out a counter-proposal. He would lead the strategy development, but with strict boundaries on his time commitment and with a co-lead for when his parenting responsibilities took priority. "It's unusual," Jonathan acknowledged, reviewing the proposal, "but not unworkable. It would mean a smaller role for you, less visibility." "I'm okay with that," Jaden said with newfound certainty. "My priorities have changed." That weekend, as he prepared for August's regular visit, Jaden received an unexpected email from Lydia. "After careful consideration, I've decided not to pursue the Oxford Fellowship at this time. While it's an important opportunity professionally, I believe stability is more important for August right now. This includes maintaining his relationship with you, which would be challenged by such a long separation. I wanted you to know this was my decision alone and not an invitation to revise our current arrangements. Lydia." The message left Jaden with complicated emotions, relief that August wouldn't be taken away for months, gratitude for Lydia's consideration, and a renewed sense that perhaps they were finally learning to co-parent effectively despite their painful history. He responded simply, "Thank you for letting me know. This means more than I can express." As winter gave way to early spring, Jaden settled into a new rhythm. Challenging work on the Samsung project balanced with his commitment to August, ongoing therapy with Dr. Chen, and a cautiously amicable co-parenting relationship with Lydia. Daniel remained a presence in the background, but Jayden had made peace with this new reality. Then came the letter that changed everything. It arrived on embossed stationery from Carmichael & Associates, a prestigious law firm Jayden recognized immediately. Inside was a formal notice informing him that Lydia was petitioning for full legal custody of August, with a proposal to reduce Jayden's visitation to 1 weekend per month and supervised holidays. The stated reason froze his blood. Concerning behavior, suggesting emotional instability and continued patterns of deception. Jayden called Lydia immediately, his hands shaking as he held the phone. "What is this? What concerning behavior?" "I can't discuss this directly," she replied, her voice cool and distant. "My lawyer advised against it. The petition explains our concerns." "Our concerns? You mean yours and Daniel's?" The betrayal felt fresh and sharp, cutting through the careful rebuilding of trust. "After everything, the hospital, your email about Oxford, how could you do this?" "This isn't about Oxford or the hospital, Jayden. My lawyer will be in touch with yours." The call ended, leaving him staring at the phone in disbelief. He read through the petition again, searching for specifics. There were vague references to unreliability and questionable decision-making, but nothing concrete. It made no sense after months of improving relations and co-parenting successes, unless there was something he didn't know, something that had changed Lydia's perspective entirely. The following day, Jayden sat in his lawyer's office, the petition spread between them on the polished desk. Catherine Winters, a formidable family law attorney with 20 years of experience, studied him with evaluative eyes. "This petition is unusual, given your recent co-parenting history," she observed. "Has anything happened to trigger such a dramatic change?" "Nothing," Jayden insisted. "Things have been better than ever. August recovered from pneumonia. Lydia decided against the Oxford Fellowship. We've been communicating well." Catherine tapped her pen against the petition. "These allegations are deliberately vague, which suggests they're either fishing for evidence or what? Or they have something substantial they're not revealing yet. A strategy to catch you off guard at the hearing." She leaned forward. "I need you to be completely honest with me, Jayden. Is there anything at all that could be used against you?" He thought about the past several months, his therapy sessions, his scaled-back work schedule, his consistent visitations with August. "Nothing I can think of. I've rebuilt my entire life around being a reliable father." The petition mentions continued patterns of deception. Could this relate to something beyond the original infidelity? Jayden shook his head. "I've been completely transparent with Lydia about everything. My schedule, my arrangements for August, even my therapy progress when it's relevant to parenting." Catherine made some notes. "We'll request specific examples of the alleged concerning behavior and file a counter-response. In the meantime, document everything. Every interaction with Lydia, every moment with August, every communication." As Jayden left the office, his phone buzzed with a text from Madison. "We need to talk. Blue Bottle Coffee on Pike. 4 p.m. Come alone." The cryptic message from Lydia's fiercest defender was the last thing he expected. With trepidation and curiosity, he arrived at the designated coffee shop precisely at 4. Madison sat in a corner booth, 2 coffees already on the table. Her expression was uncharacteristically troubled. "Thanks for coming," she said as he sat across from her. "This isn't easy for me." "What's going on, Madison? Why is Lydia trying to take August away from me?" Madison glanced around before leaning forward. "It's not Lydia. It's Daniel. He's convinced her that you're unstable, potentially dangerous." "Dangerous?" Jayden was incredulous. "Based on what?" "He found your therapy records." The statement hit like a physical blow. "That's impossible. Those are confidential. Daniel's sister works in administration at the medical center where Dr. Chen practices. She accessed your file as a favor to her brother." Madison's disgust was evident. "He's been feeding Lydia selective information from your sessions, framing it as evidence you're mentally unfit." Jayden felt sick. The sacred space of his therapy, the honest struggles, the dark thoughts he'd worked through, the painful self-examination, weaponized against him. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked, studying Madison's face. "You've never been my advocate." "Because this is wrong," she said simply. "I despised what you did to Lydia. I still think you're selfish and entitled in ways you don't even recognize. But you're a good father to August. You've proven that consistently. and no one deserves to have their therapy used against them. Jayden processed this, the implications unfolding. Does Lydia know how Daniel got this information? He told her a concerned colleague at the medical center noticed red flags in your file. She believes she's protecting August. Madison's expression softened slightly. Lydia isn't vindictive, Jayden. She genuinely thinks you're hiding serious issues. I need to talk to her directly, make her understand. She won't listen. Daniel has been very persuasive. Madison hesitated. There's more. He's pushing her to move to Boston. He's been offered a position at Harvard starting this summer. The floor seemed to drop out from under Jayden. That's across the country. She can't just take August. With full custody, she could. That's what this is really about. Madison pushed a folder across the table. These are copies of emails between Daniel and his sister, and between Daniel and a contact at Harvard. I found them when I was using Lydia's laptop. She has no idea I have these. Jayden stared at the folder. Why, Madison? After everything, why help me now? Because August deserves both his parents, she replied firmly. And because I've watched you change, really change over the past year. You're not the same man who betrayed Lydia. I didn't want to admit that for a long time, but it's true. As Madison left, Jayden remained at the table, the folder before him containing evidence of a betrayal nearly as profound as his own had been, the manipulation of Lydia's trust and fears to serve another's agenda. The confrontation came sooner than expected. That evening, Jayden drove to Lydia's house, the folder of evidence beside him, his heart racing with adrenaline and righteous anger. Daniel's car was in the driveway, exactly as he'd anticipated. Lydia answered the door, her expression shifting from surprise to wariness. Jayden, this isn't appropriate. Our lawyers should be communicating. We need to talk, now. He kept his voice low but firm. It's about Daniel and how he got my therapy records. Her eyes widened slightly, enough to confirm Madison's story. August is asleep. I don't want to argue in front of him. Then let's talk outside. On the front porch, with Seattle's spring rain providing a steady backdrop, Jayden laid out everything Madison had told him, presenting the emails as evidence. Lydia read them silently, her face growing paler with each page. This can't be right, she whispered, but the uncertainty in her voice betrayed her doubts. Call my therapist directly, Jayden urged. Ask him if I've ever shown any behavior that would make me a danger to August. Ask him about the ethics of accessing confidential records. Ask him anything you want. The front door opened, and Daniel stepped out, his expression darkening as he took in the scene. Lydia, what's going on? She turned to him, the open folder in her hands. Did you access Jayden's private therapy records through your sister? Daniel's hesitation was brief, but damning. I did what was necessary to protect you and August. The things he's discussed in therapy were private, Jayden interrupted, his voice tight with controlled fury, and protected by doctor-patient confidentiality laws, which you and your sister violated. That's a criminal offense. You have no idea what's in those records, Daniel continued, addressing Lydia while ignoring Jayden. His anger issues, his narcissistic tendencies. Stop. Lydia's voice cut through the night air. Just stop. She turned to Jayden, her expression a complex mix of emotions. I need time to process this, to speak to Dr. Chen myself. You also need to know he's been pushing for the Harvard position, Jayden added, pointing to the relevant emails. This custody petition isn't about protecting August. It's about making it possible to move him across the country. Lydia's shocked gaze shifted to Daniel, who had the grace to look uncomfortable. You told me you turned down Harvard months ago. The silence that followed was answer enough. I think you should go, she told Daniel quietly. We'll talk tomorrow. Lydia, don't let him manipulate you, Daniel protested. Everything I did was to protect yourself and your plans, she corrected. Please leave now. After Daniel reluctantly departed, Lydia and Jayden stood in silence, the rain intensifying around them. I'm not dangerous to August, Jayden said finally. Everything I've done, the therapy, the career changes, all of it, has been to become a better father to him. I know, she whispered, tears mingling with raindrops on her face. I think I've always known that. But when Daniel showed me those therapy notes, taken out of context, you were scared, I understand that. Jayden stepped closer, careful not to crowd her. I've given you every reason to distrust me in the past, but not about this, never about August. Lydia nodded slowly, wiping tears with the back of her hand. I'll withdraw the petition tomorrow, and I'll call Dr. Chen myself to apologize for this invasion of privacy. The relief was overwhelming, but Jaden sensed there was more to say. And Harvard? Boston? There is no Harvard, she said with finality. Not for us. August belongs here, with both his parents. As they stood together in the rain, an unexpected moment of understanding passed between them. Not reconciliation, not forgiveness, but something equally powerful. Recognition of the truth that bound them together more strongly than betrayal could separate them. Inside the house, a small voice called out, "Mommy, Daddy?" They turned simultaneously toward the sound of their son, awake and aware of their presence even through the closed door, a reminder of the innocent life at the center of their complicated adult drama. "Go to him," Jaden said. "I'll call tomorrow." Lydia hesitated, then reached out to touch his arm briefly. "Thank you for fighting for him, for not giving up." As she went inside to comfort August, Jaden remained on the porch, the rain washing over him like absolution. In his darkest moment, an unexpected ally had emerged. In facing a new betrayal, he and Lydia had found common ground they'd thought lost forever. What neither of them realized, as they retreated to their separate corners of August's life, was that Daniel Harmon was not a man who accepted defeat gracefully. And his sister's illegal access to medical records was far from the most troubling secret he kept. The brief victory Jaden felt as he drove home that night was built on shifting sand, and the tide was already turning. The following morning dawned with deceptive calm. Jaden woke to a text from Lydia. "Meeting with my lawyer at 10 to withdraw the petition. We'll call you after." The simple message carried the weight of near disaster averted, and he allowed himself a moment of profound relief before starting his day. At the office, he moved through his meetings with distracted efficiency, his mind repeatedly drifting to August, to the future that had nearly been stolen from them both. By noon, when Lydia still hadn't called, a subtle unease began to creep through him. He checked his phone repeatedly, sent a casual inquiry that went unanswered, and finally called Madison. She had the meeting, Madison confirmed, but then Daniel showed up at her office. They left together about an hour ago. Left together. The unease crystallized into concern. Did she seem willing, or... Madison hesitated. Hard to tell. She looked upset, but she went with him voluntarily. Jaden thanked her and hung up, trying to quell his rising anxiety. Perhaps they were simply having the difficult conversation that needed to happen. Lydia confronting Daniel about his deception, ending their relationship with the dignity she brought to everything in her life. His phone rang, an unknown number. He answered immediately. "Mr. McCormick, this is Amelia Winters from Bright Horizons Daycare. I'm calling because we have a situation regarding August." The professional tone couldn't mask the concern beneath. "What kind of situation?" "Doctor, Harmon arrived to pick up August about 20 minutes ago. He's not on our authorized pickup list, but he had a signed note from Ms. McCormick. Something about the note seemed off. When we called to verify, there was no answer." Jaden was already on his feet, grabbing his keys. "Do not release my son to him. I'm on my way. Have you called the police?" "Not yet. We wanted to..." "Call them now. Tell them there's an unauthorized attempt to remove a child by someone who recently accessed private medical records illegally. I'll be there in 15 minutes. The drive to the daycare passed in a blur of weaving through traffic and running yellow lights. When Jaden arrived, 2 police officers were already present, speaking with the daycare director. August sat in a playroom beyond, happily oblivious to the drama unfolding around him. "Where's Daniel?" Jaden demanded, scanning the reception area. "He left when we refused to release August," the director explained. "He became quite agitated, saying Ms. McCormick had given permission and he was doing this at her request." One of the officers approached. "Mr. McCormick, Officer Ramirez, we understand there's a custody dispute involving your son. There was a petition filed, but it was being withdrawn today," Jaden explained, struggling to maintain composure. "Doctor, Harmon is my ex-wife's boyfriend. He has no legal right to August, and we recently discovered he illegally accessed my confidential medical records." The officer made notes while her partner spoke quietly into his radio. "We'll need to verify all this. In the meantime, your son remains safe here." "I need to find Lydia," Jaden insisted. "Something isn't right. Do you have reason to believe she's in danger?" The question gave Jaden pause. Did he? Daniel's actions were manipulative, underhanded, possibly illegal, But dangerous? He had no evidence to suggest physical threats. I don't know, he admitted, but this behavior is extreme and escalating. As if on cue, his phone rang. Lydia's number. Jayden. Her voice was strained but controlled. I need you to listen carefully. Lydia, what's happening? Daniel tried to take August from daycare. I know, I'm with him now. He says... She paused, and Jayden could hear muffled voices in the background. He says he was trying to protect August from you, that your therapy records show intentions to take August out of the country. That's absolutely false, Jayden said forcefully, motioning to the officers to listen. Lydia, you know me. Whatever he's showing you is fabricated. He has documents, Jayden. Emails to foreign contacts about relocating. The absurdity of the accusation momentarily stunned him. Those must be work emails about the Samsung project, a South Korean company. This is insane, Lydia. Where are you? Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice had dropped to near whisper. Daniel's lake house, north of... The call abruptly ended. Jayden stared at the phone in horror, then relayed the conversation to the officers. This sounds like a potential hostage situation, Officer Ramirez said, her demeanor shifting to high alert. We need to find this lake house. Madison would know, Jayden realized aloud, already dialing. Within minutes they had the address, a remote cabin on Lake Kavanaugh, about an hour north of Seattle. As police coordinated a response, they instructed Jayden to remain at the daycare with August. That's my ex-wife up there, he protested. I need to help. The best thing you can do is stay with your son, Officer Ramirez insisted. We don't know what's happening, but if this situation escalates, August needs a parent here. The logic was irrefutable, however much it chafed against Jayden's instincts. As the officers departed with promises to update him, he found himself in the daycare playroom, watching August stack colorful blocks with fierce concentration. Daddy build? August offered him a red block, his expression hopeful. Jayden forced a smile, taking the block and adding it to the growing tower. Daddy will help build, he assured his son, the simple promise carrying deeper meaning than August could understand. Madison arrived 30 minutes later, her face tight with worry. Any updates? Jayden shook his head. Nothing yet. The police are on their way there now. They sat together in uncomfortable alliance, watching August play, while their minds raced with worst-case scenarios. The minutes stretched into hours, the afternoon sunlight shifting across the playroom floor as other children were picked up by oblivious parents. Finally, Jayden's phone rang. Officer Ramirez. We have her, the officer reported. Ms. McCormick is safe. She's shaken but unharmed. The relief was so profound that Jayden had to sit down. And Daniel? In custody. There's a lot to sort out, but initial evidence suggests some serious issues beyond what we knew. When we arrived, he was destroying documents and electronic devices. Can I speak to Lydia? She's being transported to Northwest Hospital for evaluation, standard procedure in these cases. She asked that you bring August there when you can. Madison drove them to the hospital, the silence between her and Jayden filled with unasked questions. August dozed in his car seat, exhausted from the extended day and blissfully unaware of the adult chaos surrounding him. At the hospital, they found Lydia in a private room, a police officer stationed outside. She looked pale but composed, her eyes lighting up when August toddled in ahead of Jayden. My sweet boy, she whispered, gathering him into her arms with fierceness. Jayden hung back, giving them space for reunion while studying Lydia for signs of physical harm. Finding none, he exhaled slowly, the tension of the day beginning to release its grip. I'll wait outside, Madison offered, squeezing Lydia's shoulder before leaving them alone. When the door closed, Lydia looked up at Jayden, still holding August close. I was so stupid, she said simply. No, he countered immediately. You trusted someone who deliberately manipulated you. That's on him, not you. She shook her head. I should have seen it. The controlling behaviors were there from the beginning. Subtle suggestions about August's routine, comments about my parenting decisions, gradually isolating me from colleagues. Classic patterns I should have recognized. What happened today? At the lake house? Lydia stroked August's hair as he played with her necklace, the familiar motion seeming to center her. When I told Daniel I was withdrawing the custody petition, he became different, cold, calculating. He said he had more evidence of your instability, documents proving you were planning to flee the country with August. She took a shuddering breath. When I demanded to see these documents, he insisted they were at the lake house. I went with him, thinking we could resolve this once and for all. But once we arrived, things escalated. The evidence was clearly fabricated, badly photoshopped emails, out-of-context therapy notes. When I called him on it, he became enraged. "Did he hurt you?" Jaden asked, his voice tight. "Not physically, but he made it clear I couldn't leave until I signed new custody papers he'd prepared. Papers giving me sole custody with no visitation rights for you. Papers that would have made it possible to take August anywhere." Her eyes met Jaden's, haunted by the near miss. He had a job offer from Harvard, another from Oxford. He'd been planning this for months. The officer had mentioned destroying evidence. The police said he was destroying documents when they arrived. His laptop, his phone, smashing them with a fireplace poker. He kept saying no one would believe me, that he'd covered his tracks. She looked down at August, now drowsy against her chest. "I've made such a mess of everything, Jaden. You protected August when it mattered most," he reminded her. "You called me. You gave the police enough information to find you. You did everything right when it counted." The sincerity in his voice seemed to reach her, and she nodded slowly. The police found other things at the lake house. Files on other women, academic colleagues, students, photos, personal information, what looked like blackmail material. "They think this goes far beyond what happened with us." The revelation was chilling. The suggestion that Daniel's manipulation of Lydia was part of a larger pattern, a systematic predation on vulnerable women in his academic orbit. "What happens now?" Jaden asked, finally taking a seat beside her bed. "Police interviews, possible testimony if charges are filed. The university will conduct an investigation." She sounded exhausted by the prospect. "And I need to file a formal apology with the medical board about the privacy violation involving your therapy records." "You don't need to." "Yes, I do." Her determination was absolute. "What happened to you was wrong, Jaden. Your privacy was violated in the worst way, and I was complicit, however unwittingly." August had fallen asleep against her, his small body totally relaxed in his mother's arms. Watching them, Jaden felt a complex mix of emotions, relief at their safety, fury at Daniel's manipulation, and beneath it all a profound gratitude that despite everything, they had found their way back to this moment of truth between them. "We should let you rest," he said finally. "Do you want me to take August tonight?" Lydia hesitated, then nodded. "If you wouldn't mind. The police have more questions, and I'm not sure when I'll be released." As he carefully transferred their sleeping son from her arms, their hands brushed. The briefest contact, yet charged with shared history and shared purpose. "Jaden," she said as he turned to leave, "thank you for believing in me even when I didn't believe in you." The following weeks brought revelations that shocked Seattle's academic community. Daniel Harmon was placed on administrative leave while the university investigated multiple allegations of inappropriate relationships with students and colleagues. His sister faced medical board review for the privacy violations, and criminal charges were being considered for both siblings. For Jaden and Lydia, the aftermath brought a different kind of reckoning. The custody petition was not merely withdrawn, but formally dismissed with prejudice, accompanied by a notarized statement from Lydia acknowledging the false premises on which it had been based. In her apartment near Green Lake, they sat together, reviewing the revised co-parenting agreement their lawyers had drafted, August napping in the next room after an exhausting morning at the park. "This looks comprehensive," Jaden observed, flipping through the document. "The expanded visitation schedule works well with my revised role at Samsung." Lydia nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I spoke with Dr. Chen yesterday," she said, changing subjects abruptly, "to apologize personally for the violation of your privacy." Jaden looked up, surprised. "You didn't need to do that." "Yes, I did." Her gaze was direct, unflinching. "He told me something important. With your prior permission, apparently. He said your therapy has focused significantly on understanding why you betrayed me, on taking full responsibility without excuses." The conversation with Dr. Chen came back to him, the therapist asking if he would consent to speaking with Lydia if she ever reached out. His immediate agreement. "It's true. Understanding my choices has been central to the work." He also said, "You've never blamed me." Not once in all those sessions. Her voice wavered slightly. "Even when discussing our conflicts, you've consistently acknowledged your responsibility." Jaden set down the papers, giving her his full attention. "Because it was my responsibility. My choices destroyed what we built together. But I wasn't perfect either, Lydia admitted quietly. I was absorbed in my academic work, in the fertility treatments. I prioritized having a child over nurturing our relationship. That doesn't excuse what you did, but it's part of the complete picture. The acknowledgement, so unexpected, so generous, left Jayden momentarily speechless. I've been seeing my own therapist, she continued when he didn't respond, since the incident with Daniel. She's helped me see that while I was a victim of your betrayal, I've sometimes used that status to avoid examining my own contributions to our dysfunction. Lydia, you don't need to... I do, she interrupted gently. For August's sake, if not for our own. We need to find a way forward that isn't defined solely by what broke us. The wisdom in her words resonated deeply. For all his therapy, all his self-examination, Jayden had continued to view their relationship through the lens of his betrayal, his sin, her victimhood, a binary that simplified and calcified their complex history. What would that look like, he asked, moving forward differently? She considered this, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear in the gesture he remembered so well. Honesty first and always, real collaboration as August's parents, and perhaps friendship eventually. I'd like that, he said softly, though I'm not sure I deserve it. This isn't about deserving, Lydia replied with unexpected gentleness. It's about choosing what serves August best, and having two parents who can communicate without resentment or blame serves him better than perfect justice ever could. From the bedroom came August's sleepy call, "Mommy, Daddy?" They shared a smile, genuine, unguarded, before rising together to attend to their son. Summer arrived in Seattle with uncharacteristic brilliance, the city basking in sunshine that transformed its usual gray-green palette to vibrant technicolor. In a small courtroom downtown, Daniel Harmon stood expressionless as the judge delivered the ruling, guilty on multiple counts of harassment, extortion, and privacy violations. His sister had already accepted a plea deal, surrendering her medical license and avoiding jail time in exchange for testimony against her brother. Lydia sat in the back row, Madison beside her for support. She had testified earlier in the proceedings, her clear, composed account of Daniel's manipulation, laying bare a pattern that multiple other women had subsequently confirmed. When the sentence was announced, 8 years with possibility of parole after 5, she felt not vindication but a quiet relief that this chapter was closing. Outside the courthouse, reporters clustered with questions about the Professor Predator case that had captured public attention. Lydia slipped past them with practiced discretion, finding Jayden waiting by his car as planned. "You didn't have to come," she said, though her relief at seeing him was evident. "I wanted to be here in case you needed anything." He opened the passenger door for her. "How are you feeling?" "Drained, but resolved." She settled into the seat with a sigh. "Where's August?" "With my mother. She flew in yesterday, remember? They're having a grandma day at the aquarium." Lydia smiled at the image. Eleanor McCormick had become an unexpected ally in recent months, her practical warmth and lack of judgment bringing a healing presence to their fractured family system. As Jayden navigated through downtown traffic, Lydia gazed out at the city, at the familiar skyline that had witnessed both the destruction and gradual reconstruction of her life. "I've been offered the Oxford Fellowship again," she said suddenly. "For next spring, not fall." Jayden absorbed this, his expression carefully neutral. "Will you take it?" "I'm considering it." She turned to face him directly. "It would be 4 months, but I was thinking perhaps August could stay with you for 2 of those months, and I'd take him for the other 2. We could make it work with video calls, visits." The proposal, so different from the crisis that had erupted around this same opportunity months earlier, reflected how far they had come, not back to what they were, but forward to something new and potentially stronger. "We could make that work," Jayden agreed. "August would miss you, but 2 months with each of us is better than 4 months away from either." They had reached her apartment, but neither moved to exit the car immediately. "There's something else," Lydia said hesitantly. "The university has placed me on the committee investigating faculty misconduct in the wake of Daniel's case. It's important work, but it means revisiting some difficult material." "Do you want me to recommend someone?" Jayden offered. "My therapy group includes some trauma specialists who might be resources." She smiled at his immediate shift to practical support. "Actually, I was wondering if you'd be willing to take August for an extra weeknight during the committee's initial phase, just until the semester ends." "Of course," he replied without hesitation, "whatever you need." The simple exchange, request and response, need and accommodation, exemplified their new dynamic. Not the passionate connection of their marriage, nor the cold formality of their early divorce, but something pragmatic and caring built on the foundation of their shared love for August. "Would you like to come up?" Lydia asked. "Mom texted that they won't be back for another hour, and I made that quinoa salad you liked last time." The invitation, casual, friendly, marked another small step in their evolution. "I'd like that," Jaden replied, switching off the engine. In her apartment, they moved with the ease of long familiarity, setting out lunch while discussing August's latest developmental leaps. The conversation flowed naturally to work updates, community news, the ordinary exchanges of people who knew each other well. "I sold the downtown apartment," Jaden mentioned as they sat down to eat. "Finalizing next week." Lydia nodded, understanding the significance. That apartment, the site of his infidelity, the secret space he'd maintained during their marriage, had represented the worst of what he'd been. Its sale was another closing chapter. "What will you do with the proceeds?" she asked. "Half goes to August's college fund," he replied. "The rest to a scholarship program for single parents returning to school. Seems fitting." She studied him thoughtfully. "You've changed, Jaden. Not just surface changes, but deep down." "I had powerful motivation," he acknowledged. "Losing you, nearly losing August, it strips away pretense pretty effectively." "Not everyone learns from loss," Lydia observed. "Some people just become bitter, entrenched in their worst patterns." "I had help," he reminded her. "Dr. Chen, my mother, even Madison in her terrifying way." They shared a smile at that. Madison's fierce loyalty had eventually extended in modified form to include respect for Jaden's role in August's life. "Have you thought about dating again?" Lydia asked unexpectedly. The question caught him off guard. "Not seriously," he admitted. "There have been opportunities, but..." He shrugged. "It hasn't felt important compared to other priorities. August and work, and rebuilding trust with you," he added quietly. "That's mattered more than finding someone new." She absorbed this, her expression unreadable. "I appreciate that, but you should know. I want you to be happy, Jaden. Completely happy, not just functional. That includes finding someone when you're ready." The generosity of the statement, from the woman he had hurt most deeply, humbled him. "Thank you for that. The same goes for you, you know. When you're ready." They finished lunch with lighter conversation, and when Eleanor texted that she and August were on their way back, they cleared the table together with the synchronized movements of long practice. At the door, as Jaden prepared to leave, Lydia surprised him with a brief hug, their first physical contact beyond necessary interactions since before their separation. "Thank you," she said simply, "for being here today. For everything, really." He returned the embrace carefully, conscious of its significance. "Always," he promised, and they both knew he meant it. Christmas Eve brought snow to Seattle, transforming the city into a holiday postcard. In the Medina house, now warmed by renovation and redecoration that had erased its former sterile perfection, August ran excited circles around the living room in flannel pajamas. "Santa coming?" he asked for the dozenth time, his 2-year-old vocabulary expanding daily. "After you sleep," Jaden assured him, adjusting the stockings hung by the gas fireplace. "Remember what we talked about? Santa needs children to be asleep." August considered this with comical seriousness before nodding. "I sleep good." The doorbell rang and August raced toward it shouting, "Mommy, Mommy here." Lydia entered in a swirl of snowflakes, her cheeks flushed from the cold, arms laden with presents. Following her was Madison, similarly burdened, and Eleanor carrying a casserole dish that filled the entry with savory aromas. "Perfect timing," Jaden greeted them, taking packages and coats. August was just negotiating his bedtime with Santa's representatives. The adults exchanged amused glances as August launched into an elaborate explanation of his day, his limited vocabulary supplemented by expansive gestures. This was their new tradition: Christmas Eve at Jaden's, Christmas morning at Lydia's, the holiday shared between households with Madison and Eleanor as extended family. Dinner passed with easy conversation and laughter. August, the adored center of their unconventional family constellation. When bedtime approached, he insisted on goodnight kisses from everyone, his small arms distributing affection with democratic enthusiasm. "I'll take him up," Lydia offered. He'll listen to me tonight." While she settled August with bedtime stories, the others prepared for Santa's arrival, arranging presents and filling stockings. Madison, who had once been Jaden's fiercest critic, now worked alongside him with comfortable familiarity. "Oxford's treating Lydia well," she commented, as they assembled a toddler-sized kitchen set. "The fellowship is exactly what she needed professionally." Jaden nodded in agreement. "August is loving his British adventure too. The video calls from museums are my favorite. He's so excited to show me everything." Since September, Lydia and August had been in Oxford for her 2-month segment of the fellowship. Jaden's 2 months with August would begin after the holidays, an arrangement they had planned meticulously to minimize disruption to their son's routine. "You're handling the separation better than I expected," Madison observed, testing a cabinet door on the toy kitchen. "It helps that it's temporary and planned," Jaden replied, "and seeing them so happy, so fulfilled, it makes it worthwhile." When Lydia returned downstairs, they finished the Christmas preparations together, working with the coordination of people who knew each other's rhythms implicitly. Later, as Madison and Eleanor said their goodnights and departed into the snowy evening, Lydia lingered. "I should go too," she said, though her tone suggested reluctance. "Early morning tomorrow with an excited toddler." "Stay for one more cup of tea?" Jaden offered. "I hardly get to see you without August running interference." She smiled, nodding agreement, and they settled in the living room, the Christmas tree lights casting a warm glow over the peaceful scene. "I got a call from Catherine yesterday," Lydia mentioned, referring to Jaden's lawyer. "She wanted to consult on a case similar to ours, another father fighting false accusations from his ex's new partner." "What did you tell her?" "That you were one of the good ones. That second chances sometimes reveal a person's true character more clearly than first impressions." She sipped her tea thoughtfully. "I told her that healing can happen in unexpected ways, even after the worst betrayals." The words hung between them, weighted with shared history and hard-won wisdom. "Do you ever wonder," Jaden asked carefully, "what would have happened if I hadn't made the choices I did that night? If I'd been there for August's birth?" Lydia considered this with the thoughtfulness that characterized her approach to life. "Sometimes, but then I look at who we've become, as individuals, as parents, and I'm not sure we would have reached this place through an easier path." "You think we needed to break in order to rebuild better?" "I think we both needed to confront truths about ourselves that comfort would have allowed us to avoid." She set down her cup, meeting his eyes directly. "I'm not saying it was worth the pain, yours, mine, especially August's, but I am saying that I value who we are now, and this wouldn't exist without what happened." The perspective was profound, neither minimizing the damage of his betrayal, nor permanently defining them by that single chapter of their story. "I'm proud of us," Jaden admitted, "of how we've managed to put August first without losing ourselves in bitterness." "So am I," Lydia smiled softly. "It took both of us to get here." As midnight approached, she rose to leave, gathering her coat and purse. At the door, she paused, looking back at the home they had once shared, now transformed into something that reflected Jaden's evolution. Warmer, more genuine, less concerned with appearance than substance. "Merry Christmas, Jaden," she said, her voice carrying all the complex history between them. "Merry Christmas, Lydia," he replied, watching as she walked to her car through gently falling snow. Inside, he checked on August one last time, his heart swelling at the sight of his son sleeping peacefully amid stuffed animals, secure in the knowledge that both his parents loved him completely. Tomorrow would bring Christmas joy, the day after would continue their journey as co-parents, and the future stretched before them. Not perfect, not what they had once planned, but beautiful in its hard-won authenticity. In the quiet of the sleeping house, Jaden reflected on the path that had brought him here. The betrayal that had shattered his perfect life had ultimately forced him to build something real from the ruins, something based not on appearance or achievement, but on genuine love, integrity, and the daily choice to be worthy of his son's trust. It wasn't the life he had mapped out for himself all those years ago, climbing the corporate ladder with ruthless ambition. It was something far more valuable, a life of meaning, of presence, of connections that transcended the shallow success he'd once pursued. As the snow continued to fall outside, blanketing Seattle in pristine white, Jaden McCormick finally understood the lesson his father had tried to teach him long ago. True wealth had nothing to do with bank accounts or status symbols, and everything to do with the people who trusted you to keep your promises. especially when keeping them was hardest. Tomorrow, August would wake with Christmas excitement, his joy multiplied by the presence of all the adults who loved him. And in that moment, witnessing his son's happiness, Jaden would receive the greatest gift of all, the knowledge that despite his worst mistakes, he had found his way back to what truly mattered, not through perfect performance, but through the messy, difficult, essential work of genuine redemption. 3 years later, cherry blossoms floated like pink snow over Green Lake Park, where 5-year-old August McCormick raced ahead on his blue bicycle, training wheels recently removed. Behind him, Jaden jogged to keep pace, ready to steady the wobbling bike if needed. "Look, Dad, no hands," August called out, promptly grabbing the handlebars again as the bike veered dangerously. "Hands on the bars, buddy," Jaden reminded him, smiling at his son's fearless enthusiasm. At 5, August had Jaden's dark hair and determination, balanced by Lydia's thoughtfulness and curiosity, a combination that made him both adventurous and surprisingly reflective for his age. They completed their circuit around the lake, arriving at the playground where Lydia waited on a bench, grading papers while enjoying the spring sunshine. She looked up as they approached, her face lighting with the smile reserved exclusively for August. "Did you see me?" August abandoned his bike to race toward her. "I didn't fall once." "I saw you from here," she assured him, wrapping him in a quick hug before he squirmed away toward the playground equipment. Very impressive. Jaden secured the bike to a nearby rack before joining her on the bench. "He's getting faster every day. I'm going to need to start training if I want to keep up." Lydia laughed, the sound easy and genuine. The famous Jaden McCormick, outpaced by a kindergartner. How the mighty have fallen. The teasing held no malice, just the comfortable familiarity they had cultivated over the past 3 years. Their relationship had evolved into something neither could have predicted in the aftermath of their divorce. Not rekindled romance, but a deep friendship built on shared purpose and mutual respect. "He's excited about tomorrow," Jaden mentioned, watching August climb the play structure with confident agility. "Wouldn't stop talking about the school camping trip all weekend." "I've triple-checked his packing list," Lydia replied, "though I'm still nervous about an overnight trip at his age." "Says the woman who took him to Oxford for 2 months, Jaden reminded her with a smile. "He'll be fine. Madison will be there as a parent chaperone, and you know nothing gets past her." The mention of Madison brought a smile to Lydia's face. Her best friend had recently been promoted to partner at her law firm, specializing in cases involving family privacy violations, a career direction directly influenced by their experience with Daniel. Madison remained fiercely protective of August, though her relationship with Jaden had gradually transformed from grudging tolerance to genuine respect. "How's the Richardson project going?" Lydia asked, switching topics as she gathered her papers. "Final approvals came through yesterday. It's officially the largest sustainable development in Seattle's history." The pride in Jaden's voice was evident, but tempered. Professional success no longer defined his self-worth the way it once had. Under his leadership, McCormick Investments had pivoted toward environmentally conscious development, focusing on affordable housing and community spaces. The company's transformation mirrored his own, earning both financial success and a reputation for integrity that had gradually overshadowed the scandal of years past. "That's wonderful, Jaden. Your father would have been proud." Lydia's observation reflected her genuine understanding of what truly mattered to him now. They watched August in comfortable silence, these Sunday afternoon park visits having become a cherished routine. 3 times a week August stayed with Jaden, the rest of the time with Lydia. Major holidays were shared, decisions made jointly, milestones celebrated together. It wasn't the family structure either had envisioned, but it worked with a harmony few divorced couples achieved. "Oh, I meant to tell you," Lydia said suddenly. "I ran into Ariadne Mitchell last week at a downtown fundraiser." Jaden's eyebrows raised in surprise. "I didn't realize she was back in Seattle." Apparently she's heading the West Coast division of some major development firm now. She asked about August. Lydia's tone remained neutral, the events of the past having lost their power to wound. She seemed genuinely contrite about everything that happened. Ariadne had returned to Los Angeles after the scandal, eventually leaving McCormick Investments entirely. Jaden had neither seen nor spoken to her since those chaotic days. Her role in his life filed away as a painful lesson rather than an ongoing connection. "Small city," he remarked simply. "That's what I told her," Lydia agreed. though it's a testament to how far we've come that we could have a civil conversation about mutual acquaintances at a charity event. Indeed, Seattle's social circles had gradually absorbed and processed the scandal that had once been prime gossip fodder. The dramatic elements, Jaden's affair, the emergency birth, the custody battle, Daniel's ultimate imprisonment, had faded into the background of more recent dramas. Those who remembered the details noted with approval how the former couple had transcended their painful history to co-parent effectively, their public interactions marked by evident goodwill. "Mom, Dad, watch this," August called from the top of the slide, waving with both hands in a way that made Jaden instinctively move closer in case he fell. They watched together as their son launched himself down the spiral slide, emerging at the bottom with a triumphant grin that showcased his missing front tooth. "Did you see? I went super fast." "Super fast," Lydia confirmed solemnly. Olympic-level sliding. Satisfied with this assessment, August raced back to the ladder for another attempt. "By the way," Jaden said as they resumed their bench vigil, "I wanted to run something by you. Eleanor's been talking about moving to Seattle permanently to be closer to August. I was thinking of offering her the guest house at my place." The Medina house, once a showplace designed to impress, had been thoughtfully renovated to prioritize comfort and family function. The separate guest house would offer Eleanor independence while keeping her close to her grandson. "That's a wonderful idea," Lydia said warmly. "August would love having her nearby, and honestly, so would I. She's been such a support to both of us." Eleanor McCormick had indeed become an unexpected constant in their reconstructed family system, her warmth and practical wisdom providing stability during the turbulent transitions. Unlike many mothers-in-law after divorce, she had maintained a loving relationship with Lydia, refusing to take sides and instead focusing on what August needed from all the adults in his life. "Speaking of family news," Lydia said, a slight hesitation in her voice, "there's something I've been meaning to tell you. I've been seeing someone. It's been about 3 months now." Jaden nodded, processing this information. "Anyone I know?" "Professor in the history department. His name is Michael Chen." She smiled slightly at Jaden's expression. "Yes, same last name as your therapist, but no relation. He's divorced, 2 teenage daughters. We're taking things very slowly, especially regarding August." "I appreciate you telling me," Jaden said, finding he genuinely meant it. "August's happiness comes first, but yours matters too, Lydia. I want that for you." The sincerity in his voice reflected years of personal work and growth. The jealousy that might once have consumed him had mellowed into something more mature, the recognition that Lydia deserved happiness, that August benefited from seeing his mother fulfilled, that their family could expand to include new connections without threatening existing bonds. "Thank you," she said simply. "That means a lot." As afternoon shifted toward evening, they gathered August and his bicycle for the transition that had become routine. Sunday dinner together at a local restaurant before August returned to Lydia's for the school week. At the small Italian place they frequented, August regaled them with elaborate kindergarten politics and dinosaur facts, his animated conversation drawing fond smiles from nearby diners. Jaden and Lydia listened attentively, occasionally exchanging glances of shared amusement or pride, the silent communication of parents who knew their child completely. When August excused himself to examine the fish tank near the restaurant's entrance, within clear sight of both parents, Lydia turned to Jaden with unexpected seriousness. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "How everything happened between us?" The question caught him off guard, especially after years of carefully avoiding revisiting the past. "Every day," he answered honestly. "I regret the pain I caused you, the risk to August, the destruction of what we had." She nodded, accepting this. "But I've been thinking lately, if you hadn't made those choices, if we'd continued as we were, would we have become who we are now? Would you have found this version of yourself without hitting rock bottom first?" It was a profound question, one that echoed conversations they'd had years earlier, but with the added perspective of time. "I'd like to think I would have evolved anyway," Jaden said slowly. "But the truth is, I don't know. Loss has been my greatest teacher. I just wish the lesson hadn't been at your expense." "Not just at my expense," Lydia corrected gently. "You lost as much as I did, Jaden. Maybe more in some ways." August returned to the table, interrupting the moment of reflection with urgent news about the largest fish having hidden behind the castle decoration. The conversation shifted back to safer territories, school projects, summer plans, August's upcoming baseball registration. As they prepared to leave, August suddenly asked, "Can Dad come see my school play next week? I'm going to be a tree, and trees are very important parts." Lydia smiled. "Of course he can. Dad wouldn't miss seeing you as a tree, would he?" "Not for anything in the world," Jaden confirmed, ruffling August's hair affectionately. Outside the restaurant, as they prepared to part ways, August insisted on a group hug, a ritual he had instituted himself years earlier. Jaden and Lydia obliged, creating a circle of arms around their son, their faces momentarily close above his head. "Thank you," Jaden said quietly, meeting Lydia's eyes. "For everything." She held his gaze, understanding the depth behind his simple words. "We made it through the worst. That's something to be proud of." As August climbed into Lydia's car, chattering about the week ahead, Jaden stood on the sidewalk, watching them prepare to leave. Through the window, Lydia caught his eye one last time, offering a smile that carried neither romantic longing nor lingering resentment, just the peaceful recognition of their shared journey. Later that night, in his Medina home that no longer echoed with emptiness, Jaden sat in his study reviewing final plans for the Richardson project. His phone chimed with a text from Lydia, a photo of August asleep, surrounded by stuffed animals with a simple caption, "Ready for his big camping adventure tomorrow." Tree rehearsal apparently very exhausting. He smiled, sending back a thumbs-up emoji before returning to his work. On his desk sat a framed photograph he treasured. August at 3 perched on Jaden's shoulders at the Seattle Aquarium, Lydia beside them explaining something about the octopus display, all three faces alight with genuine happiness. Not the perfect family he had once envisioned, but perhaps something more valuable, a family rebuilt with intention, honesty, and the hard-won wisdom that comes only through facing one's deepest failures. The betrayal that had once defined them had ultimately transformed into redemption, not through forgetting or minimizing the pain, but by moving through it towards something neither of them could have imagined on that fateful night when August entered the world. A family bound not by legal documents or social conventions, but by the daily choice to put love before pride, growth before grievance, and their son's well-being before all else. Outside his window, Seattle's lights glimmered against the night sky, the same city where he had once lost everything. Now, as spring blossoms drifted through the darkness like memories of harder seasons past, Jaden McCormick understood that sometimes the greatest gift of betrayal is the person you become when you find your way back to what truly matters. If this story touched your heart and you want to keep following inspiring and moving stories, be sure to check out our upcoming videos, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications to stay updated on new content that can brighten your journey and provide valuable insights. Join us and keep exploring stories that truly matter. I'm sure the next video that pops up on your screen will touch you as well, so click on it now and we'll see you there.